Welcome in, McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, 7 a.m., Tuesday, August 5th. Glad you're with us. Busy day today. Paul Finebaum coming up in a few minutes. Rhett Lashlee, SMU head coach, also in 30 minutes. Gerrod Hamilton will talk Missouri in our 8 o'clock hour. As we have stated, we will kind of go around the SEC, keep you updated what's happening around the league through fall camps in the 8 o'clock hour now leading up until kickoff. GMAC, we heard comments yesterday from Kalen DeBoer on some of the more simple things that quarterbacks are doing in practice, becoming more consistent, having better understanding of when to get the ball out, hitting receivers on time. Is that about what you expect to hear from Kalen DeBoer now, and what else do you feel like you may need to hear?
Well, I think it's progress. I mean, I think being where you're at day one is not necessarily always an indicator of where you're going to be at day 5. And I think that if you're growing and getting better and showing progress, then that's encouraging to most coaches. So I also don't think it's at all surprising that a guy that, hasn't really played a lot in Keelan Russell, or a guy that hasn't played a lot in Austin Mack, and a guy that's played very little over the last 3 years in Ty Simpson, that they're going to maybe be a little bit tight early in practice and start to loosen up as the practices roll along. So I think it's a lot of positivity to take from that.
Is there anything you feel like you need to be hearing about the offensive line, specifically right tackle, as far as naming a starter or knowing who's getting more reps? Is there anything that would sort of put your mind at ease there that you feel like you could hear?
No, because I don't think it's at this point necessary to name a starter on the offensive line. I think you want to develop guys so that you have depth at that position regardless of who the starter is. Like, does continuity matter? Sure, yeah. More so to me on the interior. I want to have my guards and center figured out, and I don't want to be rolling a ton there, but I know they're already rolling the left guard, so you're going to get a couple weeks of good looks there. But I don't necessarily need to know who the starter is along the offensive line. I need everybody to get a ton of reps and for everybody to be ready at a moment's notice, because the likelihood of you having some guys that are out for a series, a play, a game, 2 games, a month, a season, the likelihood of losing a guy throughout the season is incredibly high along the offensive line. So I want to have as many guys repped and ready to go as possible.
All right, coaches poll.
You see it the same way?
Yeah, I don't feel like I need to know right this second. I would like to get my center identified as early as possible, just because of the continuity and chemistry you're probably going to need there. He'll have an understanding. You want him to know who he needs to make calls for, doesn't need to make calls for. Which guy needs help in pass protection a little bit more, which guards you need to know how they're going to stay locked in with him on some double teams, whatnot. Just that extra feel that you're going to need, because he's going to be involved in so much. I would want to know who that is a little bit earlier, but the other ones I don't think as critical, because probably you want depth anyway. So you want multiple guys getting reps, because the chances of all 5 guys going through the season, slim to none. And I want those guys ready to get in the game and maybe be a part of the team, because somebody's going to go down. All right, coaches poll comes out yesterday, and Texas, the number 1 team in the coaches poll going into the season for the first time ever. This is really no big surprise. Greg, we talked about sort of the hype that Texas has right now. I want to know what you did not like first when you went down this coaches poll. What was the first team that you saw and said, yeah, they don't belong there. That's either too high, too low?
There are a lot. I don't know how you like. I see it very differently than a lot of the coaches, apparently. I don't know how you see it, but yeah, well, whoever's doing the dang poll, this is one of the more egregious polls I think I've ever seen. I mean, seriously. First of all, how is Ohio State 2 with what was lost?
Yeah, we've talked about this story before. It's the national champion just stays. We know how that works.
But if there's ever been an example of national champions not deserving to stay, it should be what's transpired with Michigan last year. Like, you're a totally different team year to year. So why do you stay? I guess I don't understand that.
No, I'm with you. I've always said that one of my biggest complaints about the polls is not just this in the preseason, like you're mentioning the previous national champion or who just had the best year last year, also is during the season. I mean, how many times do we see during the season that guys that lose a game, drop a game, just they don't seem to fall far enough, especially if it's a game to, an opponent that's not as good as you, or an opponent that is under 500, whatnot. So that's an even bigger issue that I have, is that teams in general don't seem to fall down enough. And I think you should be more fluid when you're ranking teams. All right, couldn't join us yesterday is going to join us today, usually with us every Monday, but making up that visit from yesterday, Paul Finebaum, and he's with us thanks to our friends at Craneworks.
Lift it, load it, grade it, grind it, move it, haul it, rig it, dig it, Craneworks, Rentalworks, yeah! The big dog's got it.
Paul Finebaum on Mac and Cube in the Morning is brought to you by Craneworks. Lift it, buy it, rent it, the big dog's got it. Now, Paul Finebaum.
Paul, we were just talking about voting in polls and some of the issues that we have with it. I know you saw the coaches poll that came out yesterday, Texas #1, but what's something that you feel like should be improved on, can be improved on with just how teams are voted on, where teams are placed in polls, either preseason, during the season, or at the end of the season?
I think my overall feeling on this, Cole, is that these polls don't matter anymore, but they once did. So why don't they matter now? Because we have a committee that looks into it and starts meeting in late October. The reason why they used to matter is that they set the template. And once you get in the polls at a certain position, you can't get out. And Cole, you know where I'm going here. You go back to the famous 2004 Auburn team, which started low and got up, I think once they were tied for #2, but the #1 and 2 team in the preseason were USC and Oklahoma, and they never left because pollsters are old-fashioned. They don't really watch the games like an analyst like you guys do. And I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to because I really don't care. Most of them have no earthly idea what they're doing, and that would include myself. If I was voting, if you're covering a team, how can you possibly know what's going on the West Coast or the East Coast if you're in the opposite side of the country? And now, I mean, unless you want to stay up all night and go through film.
Who doesn't want to do that except for Cole? So Cole should be the sole pollster, I think, because he's the only person I know that would literally do that. Looking at the poll yesterday, Paul, it's kind of amazing to me how egregious it is. Ohio State, with all their personnel lost, they returned less than 50% of their production from a year ago, and yet they sit there at #2, ahead of Penn State, who has everybody back, ahead of Clemson, who has everybody back, and ahead of Notre Dame, that has an awful lot of people back, and Georgia, who's got a decent amount back as well. So help me understand how Ohio State is being given this ticket to the party when really they have more answers than there are more questions than answers right now.
I think the biggest reason is August 30th at the Shoe. And pollsters and these are coaches here. So let me be honest, they know even less than the broadcasters because they have less time. I mean, if you're coaching at SMU or Alabama or Southern Cal, you could really care less about what's going on elsewhere other than your next opponent. You might pay attention to some of the teams on your schedule. So Ohio State's in there based on what happened last year, obviously, based on what's about to happen. Pollsters, coaches, or broadcasters tend to gravitate toward matchups. And this game, the second we started thinking about it as we walked out of the Cotton Bowl last year, was going to be a 1 versus 2 game. You're right. Penn State very easily could be #1. Notre Dame could be 1 or 2. You could argue that Clemson could be, but the biases are remain. And I think you start, and I don't know exactly even know where it starts, but I blame everyone, including ESPN and the magazines. It starts setting a template, and you get a coach who walks in and his sports guy says, "Okay, let's fill out the ballot." He goes, "What's everybody else saying?" And that's how it happens.
Paul Finebaum joining us on the Higginbotham Hotline with us every week, thanks to Craneworks. Is it becoming a little bit too much for Texas? Is this team ready to handle the hype, the pressure, the build-up, the noise about what they possibly are going to be this season?
I mean, it's easy to say that, and it's easy to point to all the people lost, especially on the lines. But I think the fact that they have been so good for a couple of years, they've recruited well, they've done well in almost every area, and I think Sarkisian brought some of this on by talking about his roster. So the one thing we all react to it. I mean, everybody gets a little more interested when we see that first poll, and I think we'll be more interested a couple weeks from now whenever the AP poll comes out because it has more credibility. But I think in Texas's case, they just have gotten there by virtue of being the team that's been to the playoffs the last 2 years. Cole, I mean, I can talk in circles for the rest of this time, but I know you have other guests. But it's a perception, and yesterday was the first time that Alabama didn't get the benefit of the doubt. That Alabama, and somebody said to me yesterday, where would Alabama be with the exact same roster and Nick Saban as coach?
At worst, one. But yeah, what do I know? Exactly. The thing that's amazing to me is Paul Clemson has won multiple national championships in the last decade. I know it's been some time since 2018 since they won the last one. But they have everybody back off a playoff run a year ago. They won the ACC a year ago in a down year. And it feels like their best is going to be right there this year, and yet they sit there at 6. How is that justifiable?
Well, a couple of things. It's really their first game last year. I don't think has left a lot of people's mind when they were just ramsacked by Georgia. Losing at home against South Carolina also didn't help. They didn't get as much credit as maybe they deserve for pulling off that win against SMU. And their playoff game against Texas was okay. I mean, on a day of multiple blowouts, it was at least interesting. And I think there's also a bias against Dabo Swinney right now. Instead of getting credit, which I know you give him, and I've come around. I was one of those critics of Dabo a couple of years ago, as almost everyone was. He has just shut the noise out and has built this roster back to where it's one of the better ones in college football. So I think you add in all those things and people go, well, I can't put them ahead of Georgia because they lost to Georgia. I can't put them ahead of this team. I can't put them ahead of that team, and that's how they end up where they are.
Paul, I'm interested to ask you going into this season because you just brought up Dabo and then referenced Clemson. And it used to be we would talk about Nick Saban or Urban Meyer and say, well, that team's always going to have the advantage. How many teams in college football right now would you just place ahead of other teams that you viewed close to them based on coaching?
I think that does factor into it. But to me, and I try to examine myself when I talk about Dabo Swinney because he was so easy to count out. And by the way, we weren't counting him out as a good coach. We weren't counting him out as a good program. We were counting him out as that successor to the Saban dynasty, so to speak, because they did slip. They're back where they were really 8 or 9 years ago, and for a lot of reasons, great defense, but also a difference maker at quarterback.
Paul, we always appreciate the time. Always great stuff. Thanks for hopping on, making up yesterday's visit. We'll catch up again next week.
Thank you, Cole. Enjoyed it.
There you go. Paul Finebaum joining us on the Higginbotham Hotline. We'll get to a break, come back with SMU head coach Rhett Lashlee next right here on Jox. Welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Continue talking coaches poll. If you missed it yesterday, Texas, the number one team for the first time ever in the coaches poll entering a season. Ohio State, Penn State, Georgia, Notre Dame, Clemson, Oregon, Alabama, LSU, Miami round out the top 10. We'll get to the teams that were most frustrating for Greg McElroy in the coaches poll as far as where they landed, as he referenced it as egregious in our first segment here in just a moment. That Alabama heat and humidity, it can be egregious. Don't let it affect your home and family. Keep them comfortable with an affordable Trane cooling system. They've been recognized as America's most trusted brand 11 consecutive years, and they're the official cooling partner here at Jox. Find a comfort specialist near you at Trane.com. It's hard to stop at Trane. So we were going to go down that list, GMAC, of these teams on the coaches poll and where they fell. What was the first one that you saw that you said, yeah, no, that's not it?
Ohio State at 2. I think we've already kind of that though. Like we already hit that one, so I feel good about it. Clemson at 6. Next one, it's like what?
Too low, you mean?
And with everything back, don't you agree?
Yeah, but no, I just didn't want people to think you were saying that they were too high at 6.
No, too low at 6. Like way too low. Oregon at 7 to me is about right, but the teams behind them should be in front of them. Like Bama has more known commodities, and LSU has more known commodities than Oregon right now.
Could you make an argument Miami does as well?
I think you could. I think there are some question marks with Miami. New DC,
sure.
A lot of new faces in the secondary, a couple of new things that they're working, a couple wide receivers that they got to iron out. Like I think Miami's really talented, but there are some things that would hold me back from putting them in front of Oregon. But yes, as far as like who contributed last year to a great season, Miami had more guys back off last year's team.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking if you're comparing those two teams and what they have that you've seen, that you know, that you like, it's actually pretty similar when you kind of take a look at those two and see what's out there. So I'm not necessarily looking at, just who I think is going to be the better football team. I mean, Carson Beck's still new and hadn't played for Shannon Dawson. Don't know exactly what he's going to look like. So it'll be interesting to see how that one sort of plays out. I'm with you on all those so far. And I like how you place maybe Alabama, LSU, possibly Miami, even the other two ahead of Oregon. So how do you manage that? How do you handle that? Outside the top 10, Arizona State would be 11, Illinois at 12. I feel like this is the highest I've seen Illinois in a preseason poll. And you and I've talked about them. I like them a smidge more than you do, but I feel like they've usually been 18 to 20-ish in most that I've seen. So I feel like 12, a lot of respect. Am I convinced they're just going to be better than South Carolina, Ole Miss, SMU, Florida? No, I'm not, but I think they're in that category. So I think it's just whatever you sort of look at as you value more, returning starting quarterback, coaching continuity, whatever that is, maybe you push them ahead. So at the bottom, Boise comes in at 25, Texas Tech 24, BYU 23, Iowa State 22, A&M 21, Kansas State 20. So there's no Auburn in the preseason top 25. I know that's one of the first things that people will look at and say, how does that take place? We feel like with what they have on their roster should have been there. But once again, the carryover effect, Greg, oftentimes is not going to make something like that be able to happen.
Yeah, and Auburn, there are still some unknowns, and they're still off of 5 and 7. So I understand why they're not ranked. I would have them in the top 25. I'd have them in the top 20. But I don't know if I'd go as far as like have them up there around the top 10. The most egregious omission is Oklahoma by a mile. And honestly, if you really look at what Oklahoma has back on defense, with what Oklahoma has improved at, and notably improved with real, not 5-star potential, with real production at the college level, there's absolutely no reason why they should be unranked right now. None whatsoever. The other team that I think, if you really look at, kind of dive into the weeds a bit, is Utah. Like, I know Utah had a tough year last year. I know they've had back-to-back years with tremendously bad injury luck. But for them to be outside the top 25 is absurd. And don't get me wrong, I like Kansas State. I like Iowa State. I like Indiana. I like A&M. A&M's way too low. BYU just lost their quarterback. They have a lot of other pieces back, but still, I think BYU right now ahead of Utah, to me, I have a hard time justifying. SMU has a lot of new pieces up front on defense. I really like them, but to have them at 16 and to have Utah and Oklahoma unranked, to me, is just a hard thing to kind of measure up. So really, really think that this top 25, also South Carolina, with everything South Carolina lost, they should not be 13. Like, no way. I mean, if you want to make a case from the top 25, I'm fine with that. I got no issue with that whatsoever. They finished the season last year 15 and lost in the bowl game to an Illinois team that's right in front of them. But how is South Carolina 13? Like, I don't understand it. Not with everything that was lost. I just don't get it.
No, and Oklahoma one that sticks out for sure that I was going to get to, because it's been a minute since Oklahoma was not in the preseason top 25, at least from the coaches poll perspective. And if you looked at the voting, Boise 246 points, Oklahoma 221. So I don't know what one vote in the 20s or the teens does as a difference. It doesn't even feel like that's super close. There is about a 20-point gap between 24-25 and then 23-24, and then a much larger gap between 23 BYU and number 21 Iowa State. But it gets a little closer than that after you start to inch through. So Oklahoma, Missouri, Louisville, USC, Utah, Baylor, Auburn would be your first teams out as far as teams receiving votes that did not get in. It's tough to know right now. I mean, there's things like this Texas Tech team we talked about, Greg, at 24. With everything they have added, talent-wise, could be a really good team. We haven't seen any of those guys together. We don't know what they're going to look like. BYU's got some big quarterback concerns now. Iowa State got a lot coming back, but overall, is their roster near as talented as some of these others up there? No, probably not. But that doesn't always make you the best football team. It is intriguing towards the bottom, because some of those teams are easy to like, but then they're easy to have concerns with. And some of the teams that were left out, I'm with you on Oklahoma 100%. Not even really going to push back on that. But some of the other teams too, you look at and you wonder, man, Louisville's not there, Missouri's not there. Like you said, Utah's not one of your top 25 teams heading into the season. It feels a little odd.
It does. And honestly, look at teams like I said, and it's really more of a matter of preference. Like, do you like SMU better than Kansas State, Iowa State? Do you like Iowa State better than Kansas State, SMU, BYU? Like, really, if you look at the clump of teams between, say, you really want to go all the way to Ole Miss, 15 and 40. Like, I think those teams are all very interchangeable. You know what I mean? Like, maybe you're a little higher on Missouri than most, but I bet you can find 10 people that are a little bit more down on Missouri. Maybe you really like USC. I really like USC this year, but I bet you there's a handful of people that are down on SC. Like, I'd have SC as a top 11, 12 team, and yet here they are in the coaches poll at 29. Like, I think that collection of teams from say 15 through 35 this year is very, very debatable, because there's so many pieces that have new pieces, and then some have gone to the portal and have added new guys, and I just think it's hard to kind of put those teams in place. But what I find most fascinating about the whole deal is that if you're going to go off of what you did last year, and we always punch holes in this, it's like I feel like the committee uses different criteria to put teams in different places. Clearly, South Carolina's ranked 13th based off last year. Clearly, Ohio State's ranked second based off last year. Well, how is it that a team that went 8-5 in Florida is ranked ahead of a team that went 11-2 in Indiana, or 12 and what was 11-3 in SMU? How is it, if we're ranking off last year, and that's a big reason why you're justifying it, why are teams that had great years last year ranked behind teams that did not have great years last year, like Michigan and Florida? That's what I'm having a hard time with.
That's totally fair. 1999 was the last time that Oklahoma was not ranked in a preseason coaches poll. So it has been a minute that has taken place. Been a minute since Bromberg's been in business too, Greg. Tell our listeners why they're so great.
Well, they're fantastic, and been using Bromberg's for a long time. It's the only place I've shopped since we've been back, and it's been tremendous. The experience you have when you walk in the door at their Mountain Brook Village store or at their store at the Summit. The selection's incredible. The salespeople are incredible. You're going to be very, very pleased with the experience you have when you go and shop at Bromberg's. And got some pretty big news for those that like to visit the Mountain Brook store. It's undergoing a full renovation, which is going to be a redesign that kind of reflects Bromberg's long-standing commitment to quality service and the community. This transformation will really enhance the Bromberg experience, which I didn't even know it could be enhanced. It's such a good experience. But they will be open throughout the renovation. So you can continue to go in, shop, check out their jewelry, check out their watches, watch repair services, you name it. I've always trusted Bromberg's for life's meaningful moments, and I can't wait to see what's next. So go and check them out in Mountain Brook Village and at the Summit. It's Bromberg's.
All right, when we come back, SMU head football coach Rhett Lashlee joins the show live after this on Jox. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, 7:30, as we continue rolling along right here on Jox. Listen online, joxfm.com. Apps in your App Store, iPhone, Android. You can download that for free. Always listen on the go. That'll also direct you to YouTube, where you can watch the show live each and every day. SMU head football coach Rhett Lashlee joining us now on the Higginbotham Hotline, help preview his season. What did last year do for you guys when you sit there in that brand new facility and you look at your surroundings and just maybe the attention you get, how you recruit, what you're able to do through recruiting, how your team feels, the energy, just anything? How different is what you're doing right now compared to a year ago based on the season you guys were able to put together?
Morning, guys. Always good to be with you. Yeah, I mean, I think it did a couple things. I think one, internally, it validated that we belong. There's a lot of work to be done to stay in the belonging category, but when you take a transition and that our program went through, there's still some maybe doubt until you've done it. And I think you got to accomplish confidence. And I think what we were able to do validated that our program can belong back on the national stage where we felt like it should. But I think also internally, it just gave our returning players, our staff, our administration, everybody, our fans, confidence that we do belong. Now, I mean, on one hand, we have, I think, as of yesterday on the coaches poll, we have the highest preseason ranking we've had since 1985. So, like, it shows that we've at least established ourselves back in the conversation. At the same time, I mean, 1 year doesn't prove anything, and so I think we're still very motivated internally that we have a lot to prove still.
Well, it's obviously proof of concept, and you've done a great job, and obviously have tremendous support amongst the boosters there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and throughout the country that want to see SMU back. But it looks like now this year could be more challenging because now the target is on your chest to a certain extent. How differently has the team prepared this year, knowing that they'll be kind of more in the hunted role as opposed to the hunter?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's obviously kind of just part of the process of us building the program where we want it to be. And, back-to-back 11-win seasons, what we were able to do last year got everyone's attention. So to your point, we're not sneaking up on anybody, and no one's going to take us for granted. I mean, last year we were 7th in the preseason poll. This year we're 3rd. So, all that stuff's great because it just proves that we've done some good things. But at the same time, I mean, I think our guys are motivated again. Like I said, we weren't picked to get back to Charlotte. Nobody's picking us to go to the college football playoff. I think there's still a little bit of, just like we felt last year, we really had to prove we belong. I think now we have to prove that, we have the ability to have sustained success. And I mean, obviously, Greg, you were a part of a lot of that run at Alabama. I mean, that's what's so impressive about what Coach Saban and y'all were able to do. It wasn't just that you won a few national titles or that you had a few good years. It was the incredible ability to sustain that success year in and year out. And I've said success is really hard, sustained success is harder. And that's the part of our kind of programs development we're in right now is how do we prove that we can year in, year out be a contender? And so we got a chance to prove that we're capable of that this year.
Rhett Lashlee, SMU head coach, joining us on the Higginbotham Hotline. Where is your team continuity right now? And individually, I know it can be different at different positions. You add some more real talent through the portal, similar to a year ago, but you're able to make a playoff run. How can you and your coaches sort of fast forward this? How can you find a way to force that continuity a little bit faster than you normally might need? Where is that aspect of your football team today?
Yeah, I mean, we've had 5 practices. We're going to have 6 today. I think it's in a good place. I mean, every year you're building a brand new team, so no team's like the last. And so that's what's kind of exciting and fun about fall camp is you're building this year's culture, identity, continuity, as you're saying. I think offensively there's a lot of consistency because Kevin Jennings returns. And so you have a returning quarterback. We lost 2 really good players. We lost Bashard Smith. We lost Roderick Daniels. We lost a couple other guys, Keyshawn Smith's in the NFL and so on and so forth. But we have a lot back on offense, and a lot of our new faces on offense are really quality high school recruits we brought in. We sprinkled in a transfer or 2 up front to help us. But most of our guys are either returning or young guys. So we're in a good place there. On defense is where we lost a lot. And so, there's been a bunch of transfer D tackles and a few defensive ends and linebacker pieces that, that's where we have to try to make sure that we can establish that kind of standard on defense that we've had, that culture on defense that has really helped us the last 2 years. I mean, that's been the difference for us. It's what Scott Simons has done and that staff on that side of the ball. We played championship level defense the last 2 years, and that's why we've been able to win. And so I think that's probably where we've got the most growth that has to occur over this month. But so far, this whole team has proven that they're kind of a no-nonsense group, and they're all about accountability. I mean, they hold themselves accountable. They've done it all summer. They've done it in fall camp. We haven't faced a lot of adversity yet, so that'll be the last test. But right now, I kind of like where our guys are.
Understandably. And last year, you guys are so good up front defensively. I know there's some new pieces there, but with the additions in the portal, you got to feel like it's been pretty good. I am curious about Kevin Jennings' growth and development because I feel like last year was kind of amazing to watch him. He always made plays. That was undeniable. But even like fundamentally, he could clean so much up and be such a better player. Like to see what he did and to see what he might be capable of if he were to clean a couple things up, a la not dropping too deep in the pocket, 2 hands on the ball when scrambling, what have you. I mean, easy things to fix. So how much progress have you seen from him this season, this offseason, to know that he can take that next step as a player this year?
man, Kevin's in a great place. He's been really hungry to just become a complete quarterback. I think, De'Aaron King's been great for him this offseason. When you start physically, he's added 10 to 12 pounds, which I think will really help him, as just week in, week out at this level, hold up. And even he's a little faster and stronger because of that. So he's dedicated himself physically. I think mentally he kind of went into this deal like, look, I want to be the offensive coordinator on the field. Like, I don't want to just know my job. I want to know the whole thing at a higher level. And so he really studied that in the spring and the summer. And then to your point, like whether it's fundamentally with his drops, I mean, that just comes with now he's going to be his first year as the full-time starter. He's had a full offseason knowing he was the starter for the first time, value in the football. 2 games get a lot of attention because we turned it over at an alarming rate, one being our last game. But in 11 starts, 9 of them he was pretty good. You know what I mean? And so I think he's got to go out and just prove that he can continue to be this aggressive playmaking style QB, as you saw in the second half of that Clemson game. At the same time, value the football. And then to your point, fundamentally, there's just a lot of little areas that maybe the average person might not notice, that if he cleans up, it'll just help him be a more consistent QB. And he's really motivated. 5 practices in so far. He looks like a different guy in a good way, and he was pretty darn good last year. So, we're excited about him getting out there and showing the growth he's had.
Rhett, we appreciate the time, man. Thanks for hanging out with us, previewing your football team this upcoming season. I know it's a busy time, but we enjoyed it.
Man, I appreciate it. Y'all didn't ask me any questions about SEC history. I'm kind of shocked.
I think there were some folks that wanted us to, but hey, I feel like you said what you.
If you want to expound, we'll leave the floor open for you, my friend. If you want to go, we'll go
on anything. Hey, no shots were taken. I just stated an obvious fact. I don't know if people don't like it. I don't know what they want me to do about it. So hey, I appreciate you guys. Y'all are the best, Greg. Hopefully next year we get to play a little golf again, and maybe I can come out on the right side of it this time.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Hopefully we won't be chipping off some bluestone to settle the end of it. So maybe we'll have a real shootout next year. It'll be fun, buddy. It's good to see you. Good talk to you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
SMU head football coach Rhett Lashlee joining us there on the Higginbotham Hotline. And, I mean, more talent coming in. Jeffrey Imba's a name that a lot of people remember. Played at Auburn D tackle, played at Purdue, has a ton of talent, boatload of talent. That could be somebody that you look at and say, all right, it's going to help that D-line. Trey Wilson coming in from Baylor. You also have Ja'Kai Lane coming in from Missouri. They've gone and gotten more talent up front, G-Mac, and I think that's the area that a lot of people didn't realize how good they were last year was on that defensive line. The ability to have a couple players that could move around, ability to hurt you off the edge, big enough to sort of hold up, not just get taken advantage of on the interior of that defensive line, and going to try to replenish that and be that again this year.
Well, what was amazing is I think even as someone that watched them and knowing and talking to Rhett before the season and talking about what they were trying to do, their full attention was on trying to be good along the offensive and defensive lines. That was what was concerning, because they knew that was the biggest jump from where they were in the American to where they were going in the AAC. They had to be buttoned up along the offensive and defensive lines. So to know that they went from that being a question mark in the preseason to being pretty dang star-studded by season's end is pretty dang remarkable with their talent assessment and an assessment of how they were going to try to match up week to week. And they got a bunch of guys from Miami, so they had ACC transfers, which were helpful, but that doesn't tell the whole story. Scott Simmons did an amazing job. And I do think that this SMU team, while they do have some things that they need to replace, there's no denying that, especially along the defensive line. And look, people are going to be gunning for them for sure. I'm sure they spent an entire offseason focusing on them, making sure that they know how to defend, what Rhett does offensively. And they're going to be a heavy focus point for a lot of teams, but they're going to be good again. It's just, will they be good enough to get to, say, 10-2, 9-3, to where they're back in the playoff mix and back in the conversation?
I don't think there's any doubt. They'll look for some added value there through the transfer portal, and we're going to add some value here on Jox. I'll introduce you to our friend and wealth advisor, Tad Hill, your trusted retirement planning partner. Tad is a co-host of the Retire with Freedom and radio TV shows in Birmingham and Huntsville, also designated by Forbes as the #1 financial securities professional in the state of Alabama, multiple years running. Tad, what do you have for us today?
Okay, today is a topic that we've discussed before, but it's a pretty constant issue, and that is market volatility. And definitely the markets have been topsy-turvy for months in a row now. And if you're already retired or you're within 5 years of it, there's a thing called sequence of returns risk. And I can't go through all the math here. I can do that in our course or in a visit. But the bottom line is, if you get poor returns early in your retirement, then you are at a much higher risk of running out of money. And our Retire with Freedom process is designed to help you build a plan to insulate you from that. We can help you. I would really encourage you to come to one of our courses or come in for a visit. And the way to do that is to text Jox at 205-988-0006. That's 205-988-0006. Text Jox, 205-988-0006.
This is a paid placement. Investment advisory services are made available through AE Wealth Management. For more information about Forbes rankings, visit Forbes.com.
All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. 7:45 Tuesday, August 5th, right here on Jox. We were rolling through the coaches poll before we visit with Rhett Lashlee, but want to spend a little bit more time on that team, GMAC. The beginning of the schedule, interesting. East Texas A&M, but then they get Baylor. But that's Baylor after they play Auburn on a Friday night, depending on how that game goes. Could have some determination on what they're going to look like in week 2 against SMU. At Missouri State, at TCU. Then you get a week off before you play Syracuse, Stanford, at Clemson, at Wake, back-to-back weeks, Miami, at Boston College, Louisville, at Cal. I look at that schedule and say, whoa. I know the beginning of it and the non-con, not as difficult as some people might want when you see East Texas A&M and Missouri State. However, you're at BC late. You're at Clemson and Wake in back-to-back weeks. That also makes 3 road games in 4 weeks with Miami at home sandwiched in between those. We know Clemson a national title contender. I think TCU is going to be a better team than people believe right now. Syracuse, obviously, a team that's going to add Steve Angeli at quarterback. They're going to be tough. It's just Louisville's the team that we like a lot. I mean, it's a tougher schedule than I think probably SMU is going to get credit for playing.
Way tougher. And who's dogging their non-con? They played 10 Power Fives. And we both are fans of Baylor and TCU. I think you can make a strong argument that both belong in the preseason top 25. Like who would dog the non-con? If you want to dog,
you know what
anything,
people
you can
do
dog.
though? They see those two teams and they say, "Why are you playing teams that low? Like why add those two teams to the schedule?" That's not me, but I'm just there are people that are going to be there.
Tango. I get that. You're right, but it takes two to tango. Like how many teams are wanting to play SMU? First of all, TCU is a rivalry game, so that game's played every year. How many teams answer me this, is you think it's in the best interest of Texas to invite SMU to come play at their house or do a home and home with Oklahoma, or to go and play, I don't know, who's another really good team this year? You think SC's fired up about playing SMU right now? You think those are teams that want to play SMU? No, heck no, because they're same thing, other side of the coin. How many teams are getting credit for beating SMU right now? But there's a lot of risk to playing SMU. So I think that's a ridiculous take if people are dogging the non-con, because Baylor's good, TCU's good. I also think their ACC schedule is much more challenging this year. Last year, you avoided Clemson in the regular season. You avoided Miami in the regular season. And I believe they did beat Louisville at Louisville. I think Louisville has a chance to be as good. I think Miami is going to be better in some areas. And I think Clemson's going to be better in some areas. So you now get 3 of the top 4 ACC teams that are now on your schedule, when last year you're able to avoid all but one of those aforementioned teams.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I think it's a really tough schedule. Back-to-back road games at Missouri State, which is a weird one, and then TCU, and you get a week off. And then, like I said, later in October into November, 3 road games in 4 weeks, and you finish at Cal, which is always just a weird trip, and one that a lot of teams don't go out there and look dominant against that team, specifically if it ends up being a later game. But you like where they've reloaded on the defensive line. You love the fact that Kevin Jennings coming back, not only your leading passer returning, but your leading rusher returning on the football team as well. So some of the pieces that are going to be there are you get an Addison Nichols, who was at Arkansas last year, is going to start for you at center most likely. You've added pieces in spots that they've lost that I feel like aren't going to be big drop-offs and maybe could end up being better in certain places. But outside of that schedule, what's a concern for you with this group? What do you feel like they may not have enough of that they had a year ago that doesn't allow them to match what they did last year?
I don't think they're going to be as good along the defensive line. That's my biggest problem. I think they're really going to miss Brashard Smith, their running back, last year. Those are the 2 biggest question marks. Brashard Smith was an absolute dude at running back, converted slot receiver, was just a great football player. And I don't know who that guy's going to be this year. It's going to put a little bit more of an onus on the quarterback, Kevin Jennings, who I like a lot. I think he's a playmaker, but I also have concerns about the down in, down out situational awareness. That was a problem last year. And I mean more, not situational, like third down red zone. I'm talking more like he's 12 yards deep in the pocket on a 5-step drop. Whereas he should be at no deeper than 9 ever in the pocket. So he just puts his tackles in a tough spot from time to time. And I think that, and then he occasionally has one hand on the football. Like, I think there's just some things he can clean up. If he cleans those things up, he's going to be in great shape. But those were huge, glaring spots last year that I felt like teams could take advantage of. So, Brashard Smith and defensive line, where are you at with SMU?
No, I don't think it's going to be as good as a year ago. Like you said, they had some versatility up front with the ability to move inside, outside. You also had some twitch and athleticism, but I like Jeffrey Imba. I've been hearing about him since he was at Auburn and did some good things at Purdue last year. He gives you a bigger body inside that has a little bit of that twitch. So I don't think it's going to be what it was off the edge last season, but I think it can be somewhat close and maybe even better in some other spots where you don't have to lean on them as much. They don't have to make certain plays, be as disruptive as they were a season ago. Either way, now, like you asked Rhett Lashlee, that expectation is going to be there. It's not going to be one where they're kind of battling back, because nobody really – I mean, what week do you feel like it was that they started picking up real momentum? Because I feel like it was pretty late in the season where a lot of people finally started getting on board with SMU and what they were and what they were sort of becoming. And – I mean, I guess when you looked at the earlier loss to BYU, that's why some people kind of threw in the towel and said, not a team that we really need to spend time talking about. But I did feel like sort of the conference championship race and how it was going to go with the conference championship game and maybe getting in, not being in, sort of helped SMU a little bit and awaken some people to what they were. But are you with me that it was pretty late before a lot of people really started getting on board with this team?
Well, I think when they absolutely smashed Florida State, that woke people up a little bit. But you're right. I do think it took people a little too long to probably get fully on board. I think when they beat Pitt impressively, that woke people up. But it was the week before against Duke when they won despite a -6 turnover margin. People were like, what the heck just happened? But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think most people, I would imagine listening to our show, I think they're probably pretty aware. But nationally, let's say you're an SEC fan and you're just casually watching the SEC, probably not super dialed in on SMU. You probably thought at some point they'd drop one and they wouldn't make the playoffs, so you weren't paying attention. And then sure enough, they win all the way through, finish 11-2, and find their way into the postseason and ultimately lose to Penn State. But that was a really good Penn State team. So not their best showing in that game, not their best showing in the first half of the Clemson game, but I think they earned a lot of people's respect last year. People will be paying a lot closer attention this year as a result.
Yeah, I would agree there. You brought up Penn State again, and you brought them up with Paul when we referenced the coaches poll earlier in the show. Do you think the only holdup for people with Penn State is just James Franklin's history and maybe even more so recent history? And that almost, I mean, is that doing that team a disservice by saying, well, you can't hold them out of the rankings or push them down the rankings because of what other teams that wear that uniform have been in the past, because that's not really this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's completely low-hanging fruit, but it's also a little bit part of the story. I mean, how much do you trust a James Franklin coach team? I mean, if we're about risk avoidance, can you really put all of your eggs into the Penn State basket? I mean, just being real, I mean, I understand why there's some doubt there. I think it's ridiculous because this year's team is going to be really well equipped to make a run. But I can understand why people are hesitant. That makes sense. People have been burned before. I've been burned multiple times by them. I've picked them to beat Ohio State 3 times in the last 10 years. And they have 0 wins. So I understand why people feel that way. But at the same time, man, if you look at what's known commodities, things that you know, they have more than most this season. The one team that might have a slightly better roster would be Clemson, and that's depending on the eye of the beholder.
I want to discuss another team in the coaches poll that's ranked pretty high, and that's Ohio State at 2. You and I have been kind of tooting this horn all off season. I don't understand all of the love. I get it. Jeremiah Smith, probably best player in college football. Caleb Downs, one of the best. That's incredible to have. The wide receiver core, there aren't many that you could even make an argument that are better. But the offensive line is going to have a lot of new pieces. We don't know much about the quarterback situation, not even the starter per se, but the situation in general. Running back's going to be new. Yes, they add Bo Jackson, but I don't think that that's necessarily going to be enough. I do like C.J. Johnson from West Virginia, which could help. The defensive line, not near as many of the cast of characters that we had seen at least be proven in small spots last year. Where should we be on Ohio State right now, in your opinion?
See it to believe it mode. Now, you look at the talent, you look at the roster, we're ranking them at number 2 based on recruiting rankings, which, by the way, are a pretty decent indicator of future success. But we also are going with a freshman quarterback. We also are going with a defense that lost a ton of production. Now, they're pieces that are known commodities, as good as there is in college football. Jeremiah Smith, Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles. Like, if you look at what's back, they have ridiculous top-end talent, but there are also a lot of pieces that are not back that really helped contribute to the national championship run last year.
Absolutely. All right, so there you have it with the coaches poll. A couple of teams that were left out: Auburn, Missouri, Oklahoma. A couple of teams maybe ranked a little bit too high, a little bit too low for our liking. We take a camp tour next. We told you 8 o'clock every day, going to kind of go around the SEC, what's happening at different camps. Gerrod Hamilton going to join us as well to discuss Missouri's first scrimmage yesterday, all next on Jox. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Appreciate you guys tuning in. 800-239-9569 if you want to get in. 800-239-WJOX. You can also text in 205-834-9450. Which teams may be getting too much love heading into the season, not getting enough love heading into the season? We'll use sort of the coaches poll as our barometer as to who maybe needs more attention and who are wondering why people are so high on. Greg, I don't think there's any reason to wonder why people are high on Ohio State. Like you said, the rankings from a recruiting standpoint, you'll have multiple 5-star players, a bushel of 4-star players, some guys that have played. I'm not trying to say there's nobody that's played and nobody that has any ability. I mean, you watch Sonny Styles play linebacker, like, kid can play. You know it. It's there. Caleb Downs, you obviously know what he's capable of. Igbinosun, obviously, you have an idea what he's able to do. A lot of these guys are proven. It's just, it felt like last year you went and you said, all right, here's solidified tackle, here's solidified center, here's solidified NFL running back in spots that you needed those bodies. And then they added maybe even just a little bit more than on the field presence with leadership and whatnot. I don't know if it's as wow-worthy what they did through the portal to replace some of that going into this year.
I mean, I think that part of the big question that I have with them is the production loss defensively. I think they're still going to be good at wide receiver. I think they're going to be elite at wide receiver. I think they have a chance to still be very good along the offensive line. I think with the guys that had to fill in last year in injury, I think the offensive line has very few questions going into the season. I have big questions at quarterback. I have big questions at running back, even though I like the addition, like you said, of C.J. Donaldson. I have questions to an extent at tight end, even though I think that Max Clare is going to be a really good addition for them. I love their linebackers. I think their safeties have a chance to be great. I think Igbinosun, who you referenced, who's back, guy had, I think, 15 penalties last year. I mean, that's a significant issue. Is their number one corner now is a guy that has traditionally been very, very prone to holding and pass interference penalties. So that's something worth acknowledging and worth noticing as well. But the upside is there. You cannot deny the upside that Ohio State will always have. And I still love their head coach, Ryan Day. But maybe the biggest holdup I have could be with what's going on at offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. Last year, you have a super tandem of Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles. And I think Matt Patricia's a really good coach, but I've never seen him coach defense. Have you? In college?
And I've heard a lot of Ohio State fans, Greg, throwing that around as an advantage. Like, you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know how he's going to look. You don't know what this is going to be. I'm kind of like, yeah, but he also hadn't coached at this level. Doesn't know exactly what he's going to get from his guys. How much can they handle? How much can they adjust on the fly? Like, it's just not – these aren't 7-year NFL vets that you're coaching up here. It's a little different here at this level.
I think it's very, very different. And Matt Patricia, I don't know him that well, but I'm going to assume if he's of the Belichick tree, probably not. And look, I don't know him, but probably gonna be pretty obvious what he's gonna do. Like, it's not like it's a big secret what Bill Belichick does. So I think being able to figure out how he attacks certain teams and certain opponents is fine, but there's also going to be a bit of a learning curve for him. What can I do to some of these other offenses that I'll be facing? Because in the Big Ten, you have a pretty decent variety of style of offense that you'll play, and I'll just be curious. I mean, it takes sometimes coaches a year to figure out who's doing what, and hey, this is how this team attacks us. And sometimes there's a little bit of a learning curve there. Look at Colin Klein at Kansas State to A&M last year. Nobody denies that Colin Klein's a really good coach. It's universally accepted. But it took him a year to kind of figure out what he can and can't do in the SEC based on what the opponents have. And I think that's something worth noticing as well.
I don't think there's any doubts. All right, let's go around the SEC, get some updates from camps. We talked about in Knoxville having to replace some couple of starters on the offensive line, a couple of big ones at tackle. Freshman David Sanders on why he may be ready to step in there and take the right tackle spot for the Vols.
We got one of the best D-lines in the country year in and year out. So going against Dom, going against Bryson, going against Josh Joseph, Caleb Heron, David Hobbs, like those are some of the best guys in the whole entire SEC. So I go against them every single day, and they're going to get me better every single day. So going into Saturday, I know that I've been prepared with some of the best players, so I'll be able to be ready for whoever I have to go against.
6'6", 297, true freshman, Greg. It's you saw a lot of good freshman tackles come in at Alabama and get to go against great defensive linemen every day in practice. That doesn't just mean it's going to be okay in a game. It could still be a lot of headaches for a freshman at that position, regardless of who you're practicing against.
Yeah, I mean, I think that anytime you're getting prepared to play as a young player against top-level competition, the learning curve will not be quite as steep. Now, the biggest thing that I always have with offensive linemen, you can speak to this better than me, is that he's never seen the level of relentlessness that he's going to see down and down out in college football. And you cannot simulate that. You play a game in an all-star game, it's not the same. You play in a showcase, you rep out in a showcase, it's not the same.
What about helmetless pass rush, padless pass rush?
It depends on if you're getting bull rushed. You tell me. I mean, to me, I see a lot of offensive linemen getting posterized on these bull rush drills, which not really the best indicator of future success. But help me understand this. Like, I would think playing against the offensive lineman or the defensive lineman that he played against last year, how big were they on average? 230?
I think he played at IMG, so he probably saw some guys that were a little bigger. So,
yeah, he probably saw some really good guys in practice, and I'm sure he's very well prepared, as prepared as most, to go in and play at a high level as a freshman. But it's still different. And you're playing now against guys that are 22, 23 years old, as opposed to playing against guys that were 16, 17. It's just different. And it's harder. And that's a real question mark for me with Tennessee is their offensive line. And I think it should be.
I don't think there's any doubt. I will say we may be doing a little bit of a disservice with Sam Pendleton and Wendell Moe. I like Wendell Moe a lot. Now, I don't think he is a first-round mock NFL guard from that perspective. I like the way he plays. Big, wide body he plays hard. He's got good, strong hands. But, I mean, I don't think he's an elite NFL prospect, but I think he could be good for what Tennessee wants him to do. And, obviously, you and I have seen Sam Pendleton operate at Notre Dame. We know what he's capable of. I think he brings the attitude, the demeanor that you want. So those two could at least offset it a little bit. But still – the tackles were pretty good last year for a lot of the year. And true freshman in there could be a big problem, specifically with a quarterback that is just not the high-level guy that you thought Nico Iamaleava was going to be. And how does he handle either different pressure or different busts that an offensive lineman of that age is going to make? I don't know, but it's this position that still you have to be concerned about. But maybe the two coming in are going to be able to offset a true freshman starting at one of those spots.
Yeah, and I think I really like Pendleton, too. He gave Notre Dame really good reps down the stretch, too. You know, I mean, so he's got some high-level experience in college football and has played against some of the best teams and the best players that college football has to offer. So I think that's really helpful to have a guy that's made a championship run and to kind of break him in alongside guy that is trying to cut his teeth a bit. So I think that's a really good place to start is some of the additions that you made. I think it's a good observation because I don't think enough people I know I probably haven't paid enough attention to some of the additions that Tennessee made. But that right tackle spot is a position that I'll be watching very closely. I just think about what Caden Proctor was when he arrived. And who knows if he's the same, but he was the 5-star all-world player as well. And he had some challenges and there was a bit of a learning curve as a freshman. And there were some ups and downs as a freshman, which guess what? Is totally normal and to be expected, frankly.
Yep.
So it's just something worth monitoring and not saying that that's going to lose them games necessarily, but it's something that could become problematic as the season goes along if a guy shows a couple weaknesses early.
All right. That's a little bit on Tennessee. Let's head over to Fayetteville, where another position group in the Southeastern Conference that we just don't really know enough about, that is bringing up a lot of questions as to what they could be this year, is the Arkansas Razorbacks wide receiver core. Raylan Sharp kind of discussing what the Razorbacks have sort of been throughout the course of this camp so far.
I think the big thing is for me is just the IQ level. Not just using talent, but using my intelligence as well. So I think that's the biggest thing for me is just, studying the game, knowing what I'm going against, knowing tendencies, things like that. So I think that'll be the biggest thing for me.
Where are you on this Arkansas receiver core, Greg? Because we talked yesterday about how the Arkansas strength coach answered some questions at practice over the weekend, and he referenced Taylon Green being a little bit more dinged up than a lot of people realized last season. If that's the case, and he can make an even further jump, maybe than some of us believe that he can, it might be time for a special season in Arkansas, at least on offense. But the receiver core is one that I just don't feel like we know enough about. Really, just the weaponry in general, we don't know enough about.
Nobody, with what was lost. But think about what they also found a little bit in, I don't know, I don't want to call them diamonds in the rough, but there were a lot of diamonds in the rough that have played for them the last couple of years, whether it was Tanga or Tesla or whatever. They had weapons the last couple of years, and we did not spend a ton of time talking about, oh, look at their weapons. You know what I mean? So maybe this staff and Bobby Petrino has found something in Omega Blake, who's played a lot of football. Maybe Raylan Sharp or Cisse or some of these young guys that they have coming up as well. Maybe they're prepared to take on a pretty decent sized role. But if you look at their weapons, of their top 10 receivers, they have 7 new guys. 7 of the top 10 are new. So it doesn't mean you can't go and get it done. That doesn't include tight end, by the way, where 2 of their top 3 are new. So it's just a complete overhaul. So they might be really good. They might not be really good. There's really no way of knowing at the moment.
Like you said, the leading returning receiver for the Arkansas Razorbacks is Jordan Anthony, 8 catches, 111 yards, 1 touchdown. I mean, that just doesn't feel real in the Southeastern Conference. I know it's a position we've put a premium on. I know it's a position that can command a lot of money at different places, but to have that many guys gone from your roster, and it's not all portal, obviously some via graduation, some going off to the NFL, but man, I mean, what does that do to a quarterback as far as trying to take that step, GMAC, when maybe you're having to baby some of your wide receivers, or maybe some of the that nonverbal communication where you can go over there and just give your guy a look, or you have an idea, hey, good and well, we get this coverage against this, or that corner's playing you that way against this route, break it off a little bit early, or go ahead and get vertical and I'm going to hit you down the seam. Like how different is that for a quarterback who, like Taylon Green, has a chance to take a big step, but doesn't have all that continuity with that group that he would probably like to have?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be overcome if you look at Taylon Green's skill set. Like, he's not going to be a guy that you want dropping back 30 times in a game. Like, you're going to want him to be on the move. You're going to want to marry up stretch zone with his athleticism and the threat of him pulling out the backside for a bootleg. Like, I think it's fine given the route concepts they're probably going to emphasize. But if they're all of a sudden going to start going down a direction of feel routes and chemistry routes and timing routes and stuff like that, then that would be a pretty big 180 for where I think they're going to go. But if that's where they end up, then that requires a lot of time. But I don't think that's how they're going to attack it, at least early in the season.
Well, I wouldn't anticipate either. That's how that's going to go. Alabama A&M, Arkansas State, and then at Ole Miss for the Razorbacks. They'll be at Memphis the next week, and then they get Notre Dame at home. What do you anticipate the Razorbacks be when they get Notre Dame at home after those first 4 games? Alabama A&M, Arkansas State in Little Rock, at Ole Miss, and at Memphis.
Well, the Ole Miss game, obviously very difficult. The Memphis game should be challenging as well. But you tell me right now, you think Arkansas is going to get somebody this year?
Absolutely.
I would bet a ton of money on them getting somebody. I don't know who that is. Maybe that's somebody, a team that plays a lot of man coverage in Notre Dame. Maybe it's them. Because Taylon Green, you want to play a lot of man coverage? Cool. I'll just go.
Sure.
I'll take off. And I'm going to cause a lot of problems for you. So I think the matchup with Notre Dame with his skill set at quarterback is actually quite good, because you can't play man against him because he could run 70 yards out the gate for a touchdown. You're going to have to play some zone, which is good, maybe Taylor Green will evolve in that area, because that was not something he did great last year, is kind of recognizing and diagnosing and carving up zone defense. But if that's, I'm sure, been a huge part of his offseason development, if that's been growth and if they've had growth there, then that will be very interesting. But if Notre Dame comes in playing what they play defensively, that's going to be a tough matchup for him. It really is.
Absolutely. All right, so a little bit of a look around the Southeastern Conference. We're going to talk Missouri with Gerrod Hamilton after our next break and try to get some clarification as to what's happening with that quarterback situation in Como. They scrimmaged yesterday. Don't know if a ton of information going to come out about that one just yet, but any direction that you're sort of leaning with this quarterback battle right now in Columbia, GMAC?
I still think it's going to be Prabula. His mobility and athleticism makes it very interesting. I'm not saying Sam Horn can't throw it. We know that. I know he's got a little athleticism as well, but I still think it's going to be Prabula. And it's partly because I saw Prabula do some nice things last year at Penn State. Like, they missed him when he wasn't there. Like, his ability to use quarterback run. But I also think with Prabula, if you feel that confident in your backup, then you are free to do a lot offensively that would potentially expose Prabula to some contact. If you can do quarterback power, you can do quarterback sweep, you can do some things like that. If you feel that confident, your number two guy, that if Prabula has to miss some time, backup can go right in, not skip a beat. That really opens your offense up quite a bit. So that's where I lean. Are you leaning towards Prabula right now or no?
I don't know how you couldn't, just to be honest with you. I don't know how you couldn't look at it and say, with the dual threat aspect that he's going to add, maybe he doesn't have the experience in the system like Sam Horn does, but Sam Horn's been dinged up, banged up. It's not like he has a lot of game reps in the system, so I don't know if I value that quite as much. But yeah, I think it's got to be Bo Prabula. I think you brought him in for that reason, because of physically what he's going to give you and some of the things that he does well, how they're going to fit into that offense. But, it is a nice luxury that we haven't mentioned, to have a guy that's been there with you, that knows the verbiage, knows the scheme, is very comfortable in what you're going to call and what Kirby Moore's going to want him to do right there in Sam Horn. So maybe the value is not just that Sam Horn's pushing, but just if they needed him for a week or two, kind of like what Missouri needed last year when Brady Cook got dinged up and we thought Drew Pine was going to just be able to kind of steer the ship for them when that took place. That didn't really happen. I mean, that ship hit an iceberg quick when he came in the game. It wasn't what any of us thought it was going to be. Not that we thought it was going to be elite, but man, I thought he'd be able to hold it together, and it just didn't look good. I mean, it was rough when he came in. So maybe there's the value of Sam Horn there, is that, all right, now we can run Prabula a little bit more. We know we got a guy that can come in and at least keep us on even keeled and go out there and help us win a few football games. So that's probably the value more so of Sam Horn than I think it is he potentially going to be the starter?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really a big part of the question too. And it's a little bit like, how good are they going to be along the offensive line? Like, I think it'll be Prabula, but if the offensive line is really good and they're good in pass pro and they want maybe to lean more towards a drop back style, and you use your mobile quarterback and Prabula as your change of pace guy, then I can see it going their direction. But I still think this can be a group that really lives kind of stretching the field horizontally in the run game and marrying up with an athletic quarterback. I think that's when they go at their best. And look, Brady Cook was not that guy. Like, he had a little bit, but that's not really who he was. So I think it'll be interesting to see, do they want to revert back more to a slightly more athletic option at quarterback, or a little bit more drop back? That's always going to be a huge question for me.
I don't think there's any doubt. All right, we'll ask Gerrod Hamilton about it. He covers the Missouri Tigers. We'll do that as we continue rolling around SEC camps next, right here on Jox. Welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, 8:23 right here on Jox. Talking SEC football, kind of kicking around the league. We'll do it in the 8 o'clock hour every day leading up to kickoff. And we'll continue that discussion that we were just having on Missouri a few moments ago and kind of where that quarterback situation is, maybe where the offense is right now. Gerrod Hamilton covers the Missouri Tigers for Power Mizzou and USA Today, amongst others. Gerrod, what are the early comments? What are the early thoughts, feels for maybe where this quarterback situation is for the Missouri Tigers right now?
Right now, based off the first week of camp, it's still kind of around that 50-50 split. Coach Drink was talking about during his media day last week before camp. We've seen, Bo and Sam each rep with starting center Connor Tolleson as far as, taking some snaps during drills and things like that. We'll really get to know a little bit more in the next few days. They just had their first scrimmage last night. So that's kind of the thing. Drink has, of course, been hush on it, and I think it's still very early. I think he's still trying to figure it out. I think he said this is his fourth quarterback battle in the 6 seasons he's been here. And so he said, I remember him comparing it to his first one back in 2020 with Connor Bazelak and Sean Robinson and things like that, because the ones with Brady Cook in 2022 and 23, while they were competitions, everybody kind of knew Brady Cook had the upper hand going into both of them. And then so this feels like it's a real one where he's trying to figure it out. And these are also two quarterbacks who are relatively inexperienced. So it's kind of a lot of new stuff going on. And I think he's still trying to figure out, which way he's leaning.
Looking at where this offense could go from just a philosophy standpoint, how much does it change from Prebula to Sam Horn? I mean, we know Prebula's super mobile. We know he's athletic. What does Sam Horn's skill set look like, and how would the offense potentially change if he were to win the job?
I think the offense is it's kind of hard with Sam because we've only literally seen him throw maybe, 6 passes in his career. And we haven't seen him play much. But if we're just talking stylistically from, when Brady Cook was here, they like having a quarterback that can scramble, or they can, do those QB draws or maybe some type of options. They like that. They think both quarterbacks can do that. I will say with Bo, compared to Brady, Bo is more of he's an actual runner. I feel like myself as well as some other guys who cover Missouri, we kind of agree that Brady Cook was a really good scrambler. Sometimes when they design runs, it wasn't the greatest success unless it was like a short yardage type of thing. And so with Bo, I think they can really do some really good stuff as far as those QB designed runs for him, and I think it'll be a little bit better. Sam is athletic as all get out. We know he just got drafted by the Dodgers. We know he has an arm on him. That's going to be the interesting thing. I think they both fit kind of the mold Eli Drinkwitz is looking for, but if I was just to go off of who's probably the best specifically for what Drink wants to do, I think Bo, because he's actually a runner. And with Sam, we know he's athletic, but we don't really know if he's a runner or a scrambler because we just haven't seen him.
Gerrod Hamilton joining us on the Higginbotham Hotline talking Mizzou. How do you feel like about how the other new pieces are fitting in on offense? Kevin Coleman at receiver. We love Ahmad Hardy at running back coming in. Dominic Guidice coming in at offensive line from Michigan. Are these guys coming in and just taking positions? What's the thought, the feel on some of these newcomers on that side of the ball early?
So Kevin Coleman, it's crazy to say it's an underrated addition, but just because of all the players they got, the 21, 22 transfers they got, I mean, they got a lot of good pieces, so it's hard to pinpoint everyone, but they love Kevin Coleman. I remember in the spring they were saying he's everything you want to be in the slot, and what better person to kind of fill in for Luther Burden in the slot than someone who, in a lot of ways, is kind of like a one-to-one comparison. We're talking about someone who had 74 receptions, 932 yards, 6 touchdowns. He was third team All-SEC at Mississippi State, and Luther was first team All-SEC, but Luther had maybe 12 or 13 catches less, a couple hundred yards fewer. They had the same touchdown. So from a statistical standpoint, Kevin can do that. And then there's a lot of parallels. They both play the slot. They're around the same height. Both wear number 3. They're both from St. Louis. There's a lot of things they can do there, but they love Kevin Coleman. They love the leadership he brings to the receiver room. Ahmad Hardy, I mean, I think he was 12th in the country in rushing last year, Sun Belt Freshman Player of the Year. They've got big hopes for him. I think he's going to have that kind of bell cow back type of role, especially down the line in the season. They like their stable of running backs, but to see this kind of being, if they wanted to go maybe the Cody Schrader route from a couple of years ago, where the first 4 or 5 games, they're not necessarily a running back by committee, but you can see the other running backs getting involved, and then that you get in that second half of the season and you really need some help, or you really want to, lean on that run game, especially with a young quarterback, whoever it is. You can go to Ahmad Hardy. Interesting thing on Dom was, I call him one of the spring camp darlings. Every time we talk to Coach Drink, offensive line coach Brandon Jones, OC Kirby Moore, they all had good things to say about him. His fellow offensive linemen had good things to say about him. He was filling in at center while Connor Tollison was still coming back from that torn ACL, and so he was doing first-team center for about, I think they said 11 or 12 of the 14 spring practices. They really liked what he was doing. Since then, for fall camp, he's moved over to right guard. I asked him just a couple of days ago, would you basically like to call Dom the starting right guard? And he said no, but he's doing a good job there. Something I noticed at practice a couple of days ago was Connor. He wasn't at practice. We believe it's a rest day because Drink kind of joked that he's old and stuff like that. And, of course, he's coming off that ACL, and he's kind of on the earlier side of that return. We know that's usually maybe a 9 to 12-month injury or recovery. He's around the 9-month mark. So I can see why they're giving him a rest day. But they had Dom practicing with the quarterbacks again, snapping to Bo and Sam and stuff like that. And he doesn't typically practice with the centers anymore. He's always with the guards and stuff. So I think now it's kind of like a preview of if Connor can't go for whatever reason, they would have Dom go to center, and then they would have one of these. They like their depth on the offensive line. They have Jalen Early, who they just got in the spring portal from Florida State. They got Logan Reichert, who's like the biggest player on the team, 6'6", 350. Then you got Tristan Wilson, who is another guy they've been kind of impressed with. So one of those guys would slide in guard, and Dom would probably slide to center in that instance.
How about the defense? I feel like across the board, the defense should be pretty good. I'm not really that concerned about that group, but what have you seen so far from the defense to make you feel real confident?
I like the depth they got across the board this offseason. I think every time we talk to Drink, I joke that he starts blushing when he starts talking about the edge. Ask him any question about edge, and he's going to light up. And during the offseason, there's some coach speak, and there's some, boosting every position. And then you can genuinely, tell if somebody's excited about something. And every time you talk about edge and every time you talk about linebacker, Drink genuinely gets excited with the depth of, those positions. Damon Wilson, Nate Johnson, Darius Smith, who was like the fall camp star last year, tore his ACL a couple of weeks before the season. They're really excited to get him back. He's even happier with the 4-star freshman, Javion Hilson, Dayton Hopkins. He's really happy about that. Linebackers, they got Josiah Trotter, reigning Big 12 Defensive Freshman of the Year. They got Tristan Newsom, who got a blanket waiver to come back for another season. And then they got a lot of young linebackers who actually played, 10, 11 games last year, whether it was special teams or some spot snaps on defense that they like. On the third level, safety, they brought in 3 safeties, Jalen Catalon, Mose Phillips, Santana Banner. I can see roles for all of them. Catalon, he'll be that starting free safety on the back end, 5 interceptions, third-team All-American. Mose Phillips, I think he's like a Swiss Army knife. Any of the 3 safety spots, whether it's the star, that free safety, that strong safety, they can bring him anywhere. And then Santana Banner, another good coverage guy. He's a huge safety. He's like 6'3". I can see him getting some snaps if, current starting safety Marvin Burks, he kind of struggled in coverage last year. If there's not an uptake in that, or he's not doing necessarily what they want, I can see someone like Santana Banner getting those snaps and providing some help in the coverage, type of side of things. Cornerback, that's really their only question. They only brought in Stephen Hall from Washington State. They like that they're bringing 100% of their snaps back at that position with Dre Norwood, Toriano Pride, Nick DeLoach. They add Stephen Hall, and so it's usually a 3-man cornerback rotation. It's possible. Talk to cornerback coach Al Pogue. He said it's possible that they can go to 4. They like what they got there, but they're still trying to figure out who's going to be that CB2 opposite of Norwood.
What are you hearing about Jalen Catalon's health and just where he is? I mean, the kid's played some great football, but it was a long time ago, and he's been dinged up often. Where is he health-wise?
Jalen is good. Like Connor, he had missed a practice on Saturday, and I'm pretty sure Drink called him old too. Called it a rest day. He was back at practice on Sunday, so he's good. They love a lot about him. They love his leadership. They love that he's a heavy hitter. They love that he's another ball hawk in that secondary along Dalen Carnell. So Jalen Catalon, from what I know, what they said, he's fine.
We appreciate the time today, Gerrod. Great stuff catching us up on Mizzou. I know you'll have more information on yesterday's scrimmage later today, so we'll direct everybody to your website and where everybody can get your work there. But thanks for hopping on with us today.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right. Gerrod Hamilton, he covers the Missouri Tigers, and not a ton of clarification there, Greg, on what the quarterback situation is. I mean, he almost feels like he's keeping Sam Horn in it too, a little bit more than we were. So just interesting to think that this might be one that everybody just handed to Bo Prabula. Maybe the race does go up to close to the season, or maybe into the season for Eli Drinkwitz.
Well, if you listen to Drink, like, he's absolutely on board with keeping this thing alive, and which I think is a perfectly fine way of approaching it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I think it's fantastic to have depth and competition at the position, especially when you feel like you have two pretty good options. I think Prabula is going to be a good player. I don't know as much about Sam Horn. So the fact that Sam Horn is making it interesting has to give Drink a lot of excitement about what could be at that position this year, a year when you maybe need to take a step as a program, maybe a year when you can really contend in a lot of games, given how your schedule lays out. Maybe this is the year, because of the quarterback play, they can elevate a little bit.
Yeah, it could be. But I think there are a lot of pieces to like on this team, a lot of things to like about where Missouri is right now. And I think a lot of those assets being slept on for Eli Drinkwitz's team. We'll have more time to talk about those, more time to continue going around the Southeastern Conference. We'll do that, get to Auburn, Alabama next right here on Jox. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, 8:38, Tuesday, August 5th, right here on Jox 94.5. Going to continue rolling around the Southeastern Conference. Also heard this comment from South Carolina head coach Shane Beamer, another maybe lost aspect of a team that at SEC Media Days or this entire offseason we haven't spent a lot of time discussing, but this is Gamecocks head coach Shane Beamer on his new offensive coordinator.
That was one thing that attracted me to Mike when we brought him into our program was his experience with those guys and looking at his background. And most recently, he worked with a big athletic quarterback in Cam Newton. He's been around a big athletic quarterback in Daniel Jones. He was around a big athletic quarterback in Josh Allen and how those teams that he was a part of utilized those guys. That was appealing a couple of years ago, and it still is now. I mean, he's not sitting here saying that they're cutting their cookie cutter the same quarterback, because they're not. But some of the things, whether it be personality wise, schematically, that you can draw comparisons to, and for him to be able to say, we did this with Cam when he was with the Panthers, and maybe we could do something similar with Lenoris and things like that. I think that's good. I think it's good for Lenoris. Just, Mike was around a lot of those guys at different stages in their career, either rookies or young or older down the road, whatever it might be. So there's a lot of experience that Coach Shula has, and that's beneficial for all of us.
All right, so we all think Lenore Sellers has a chance to have a big year. We all like the capabilities that are there. We saw him take over multiple games last year. Huge down the stretch for South Carolina. We do have some questions about the cast, GMAC, but haven't spent a ton of time on Mike Shula taking over. We both love Dal Loggins, moves on to be the head coach at App State. But what should we expect to maybe be different? Or should we expect things to be better? What things should we be concerned about with that switch heading into this season?
I think offensively it can be really good. I mean, I think the receivers will hopefully grow this year. I think Mike Shula does a really good job with quarterback development. I know that people in this part of the world will look back at his time as a head coach and say, yeah, he left a little to be desired. I don't think that's entirely fair, because he's not being asked right now to lead an SEC program. He's being asked to call plays and develop a young quarterback, which he has pretty dang good experience doing. I think he's in a really good spot. And with his time in the NFL, his time around Cam Newton, his time actually developing a rapport last year with Lenora Sellers as an offensive assistant, all those things point to this offense really taking some strides and Lenoris being a better player this year and more confident player this year. So I'm really optimistic about that side of the ball. It's the defensive side for South Carolina that has me a little concerned.
No, defense obviously has some issues there too, but that defensive coordinator Clayton White's going to be back. I think there's some other pieces going to be back there. But do you expect the offense to look much different? Do you expect formationally it to be different? Maybe pace, tempo, different style quarterback runs? I mean, I thought that was one thing that Dow did a great job of, was sort of mixing up how they offered different Q runs over the course of the last few years, and weren't going to do it near as much with Spencer Rattler, but obviously had a couple in there to just keep people off balance. Formationally, thought he did some nice things to sort of get mismatches and keep defenses on their heels. But just as far as how it looks, because he was there last year, should we expect it to be very close and maybe it be less of a concern?
I mean, you would hope. But I also, at the same time, I think that they're just going to be a different style team. I mean, you're not going to have a hammerback and Rocket Sanders. You're not going to want your quarterback to be exposed to potential injury by running him like crazy. You're going to have hopefully better wide receiver play. You're not going to have the tight end that you utilized last year in success. So I just think their personnel is so different. It's hard to really cross over from last year to this year. It's just, I think they're going to approach. Now the quarterback's going to be the same naturally, but I don't know if they're going to want to put him in harm's way, knowing how much their success this year will depend on him being available. And remember last year when he got a little banged up, it did not do them any benefits. So I don't know if you see it that way, but I think that this offense is going to look very different than last year. It's going to be a little more athletic as an offense, and that should be beneficial, but it also could lead to some challenges as well.
No, I think that just sort of the flow, the feel, the rhythm, and I understand you give it a little bit of a pass, a little bit of a break because Shula was there a season ago. And you just anticipate Lenore Sellers make a step. I mean, he's going to grow as a quarterback, as a college football player, as a person. So that's also going to be something that's going to take place. But, I mean, you know like I do, you change coaches, it's just different. And sometimes that understanding, I mean, it might be where Shula talks to him more in the headphones, more in the helmet before the play starts, and he doesn't like that. And that can become annoying, and that can make him think too much. And all of a sudden, just things like that being different, that can offer up for a different player, for a different result in what actually takes place. So just kind of another thing that I just felt like we weren't spending any time on and hadn't talked about as far as maybe what South Carolina may end up being or how things might be different and hell, may even be better. And that defense, I still keep kind of going back to just the guys that have been there. And you look at on that side of the football, I know Brian Thomas physically is not going to be somebody that's going to scare a lot of folks when he's on the field, but he's been in that system, been in that scheme. They'll be able to utilize him off the edge. Monkel Goodwine's also been there inside. And even, too, when you look at bringing back Nick Barrett from injury last year, he's been there. And he's been a guy that's played there, understands it. And then you go get, some players through the portal that maybe like a Tony Pikes, Sean Murphy at linebacker is going to probably be an upgrade in athleticism. Now, does that mean he's as good of a linebacker as Demetrius Knight was? I doubt it. But DQ Smith, Judge Collier, Jalen Kilgore, those guys have all played in that secondary. So I think South Carolina probably is a little more on defense than people want to give them credit for. It's just, are they going to have guys that can take over games like Kyle Kennard did on a very regular basis?
I think they'll be fine on defense. I just don't know if they'll be a top 5 defense or top 10 defense. Where'd they finish up last year? I mean, I don't know if that's exactly where they ended up, but this was a group that allowed very few teams to just run it up and down the field on them. I know Ole Miss had their number. There are a couple other games where maybe they didn't have their best stuff, but this defense was a handful last year. So if they slip from, say, 10th to 28th, that's a pretty noticeable drop. I love Clayton White. I think he's fantastic. I think they're going to be really well coached, and I like some of their personnel. There's just a lot of new, especially when you take into account the veteran presence that was there last year.
12th in scoring defense, 16th in total defense for South Carolina last year. So, and if you –
there you go.
I mean, I think where maybe the even better barometer would be is, inside the Southeastern Conference where they were 4th in scoring defense. And in total, 4th in total defense, and in scoring defense, South Carolina came in 5th in the Southeastern Conference. So just Ole Miss, Texas, Tennessee, Alabama finished ahead. By the way, I don't think we've really mentioned that Ole Miss finished number 1 scoring defense in the SEC last year. I mean, 21 touchdowns they allowed all year. All year. Next closest was Texas in the Southeastern Conference with 27. That's
not bad.
Pretty insane. But that goes further too, Greg. When, by the way, they allowed the fewest touchdowns in college football last year. Number 1 in the nation in fewest touchdowns allowed. But that goes further to what you've said about that group going into this year, that, hey, Austin Simmons might be fine. I added, when was the last time we worried about quarterbacks with Lane? Doesn't happen often. But on the flip side of that, it's not just that D-line. Trey Amos and company, you got some new characters back there. It's going to be hard for that group to stay even close to where they were a season ago.
And it's not a reflection of the coaching. It's not a reflection of this upcoming group of players. It's more of a tip of the cap to what was there. And I think some people kind of lose sight of that. It's like, I have so much respect for what was there that I think it's going to be almost impossible to replicate those same results. You know what I mean? So I think that's where people, it's like, oh, why do you think these guys can play? I never said that. I just said that last year's guys were so exceptionally good that it's hard for anybody to sustain that level of play. It doesn't matter how good they are. They could have, all SEC performers and not be as good as some of their personnel from last year. That just goes to show you how deep and how quality that group was from top to bottom.
I don't think there's any doubt. You look at the offenses that Ole Miss is going to be playing: Georgia State, at Kentucky, then Arkansas, Tulane, LSU would be September the 27th, Washington State, at Georgia, at Oklahoma, South Carolina, Citadel, Florida, at Mississippi State. I mean, there are some offenses in there, Greg, that we think are going to be good. LSU, Aaron Anderson already battling some injuries in camp, missing some time. We think Georgia's going to be good, but still, new quarterback. Don't know exactly how that thing's going to go. Oklahoma has the pieces, but a lot of that's got to fit together and work. We just mentioned the concerns with Lenore Sellers in South Carolina. it looks like there's a lot of good offenses on here, but there are also some offenses that we think are going to be good that just they don't work out this upcoming season.
Could, and there's plenty of question marks on other teams' offenses, like you said. I mean, just like we have questions about South Carolina's defense, I have questions about several teams that they'll be playing against who will, in all likelihood, not be as good as they were a year ago at certain positions. Ole Miss being maybe the best example, they'll go to Oxford. So there's a handful of games like that, and you can kind of do it all throughout all these schedules. This position group's up, this position group's down. It's not new, it's not different. It's the way it is every year, but now it's even more significant because of the portal and because of the new faces that you might have playing significant roles.
Absolutely. Okay, so when we come back, we'll finish up this hour with more talk around SEC camps next on Mac and Cube in the morning. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. G-Mac and I are going to hop off after this next break. We've got our college football seminar today for ESPN. The boys going to take you through SEC camps, continue rolling. I did see a quote from transfer right tackle Mason Murphy, G-Mac, down at Auburn. Said he loves how the offensive line started to come together. Quote, "We've got some grit to us in this O-line room. Starting five we have right now, I think we're some dogs."
Was that any indicator for you?
No, but
Top
I mean,
10 O-line now?
I
Top 5?
like the fact that they're not afraid to come out and have the understanding that they need to be good, and that they're going to go out there and say, "Hey, listen, If we don't get it done, this team probably doesn't get it done. So I don't mind putting a little extra pressure on yourself, and maybe a little bit of that's confidence. We know some of this that comes out of camp, and some of the quotes are false confidence, but I'd rather at least believe that they have some than not hear anything from them. And I've told you, this is what I need to know most more than anything else out of this team coming out of camp. I get the quarterback stuff. I got it. I think that's a massive work in progress. I think the offensive line could go further earlier for this team than any other position because they can lean on that group early. We know early in the season everybody's going to screw up. No team's going to be clean. No team's going to be perfect. No team's not going to make mistakes. You're going to have penalties. You're going to have turnovers. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have busted coverages. It's going to happen. You're going to turn guys loose on pressures. But if you can tell me my offensive line is going to be solid against a couple good opponents early, I think that might be able to help you more than anything else.
Totally agree. And I think that if you can just be sound and not get beat early along the lines of scrimmage, that's a great starting point. A great starting point. So I think that is probably outside of quarterback the most important position to play well against Baylor. Because Baylor's going to have a couple things for you. Dave Aranda's going to have a few tricks up his sleeve. When I say a couple, I mean like 72 different things that he could have that he's been studying and thinking about all off season, is drawn on paper and on whiteboards and on mirrors and you name it. I'm sure it's going to be an interesting first game. And if you can just lean on the offensive line and kind of calm down what he might try to attack you with, that's a really good starting point.
I don't think there's any doubt. And I just look at it from the perspective of, okay, let's say any team out there early in the season, it's all new, it's all different. And we talk about some of these bigger games, LSU, Clemson. We talk about Ohio State, Texas. We talk about Oklahoma, Michigan. You'll have younger quarterbacks, but you'll also have transfers in. You'll also have freshmen that are going to be playing, new guys, new spaces, hadn't spent a ton of time together. I mean, I'm almost to the point in some of these massive games early, Greg, whoever can just play the cleanest football, not be the most dynamic, not be the most overpowering, but just you don't give people first down conversions on penalties, or you don't give people second opportunities at explosive plays because of penalties, things like that. Don't bust coverages. Don't turn guys loose in blitz pickup. Those are the teams that are going to get some bigger wins early in the season, in my opinion.
And how about don't make dumb decisions in special teams? Don't drop punts. Don't misplay kickoff returns. When you try to take it out from 8 yards deep, now you get tackled at the 12 and you've given them 2 first downs based on field position. Just little things like that really contribute early to wins and losses.
Absolutely. All right, thanks for hanging in. G-Mac and I hopping off. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. right here on Jox to keep all the college football conversation happening.
Welcome in hour number 3 here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Yes, you do not hear the voice of one Cole Cubelic or Greg McElroy. Damian Mitchell alongside John Saber with the hot tag in for the guys. I think Cole's got an offensive line retreat or some sort of convention or something. I think Greg had a last-minute Mahjong tournament that he hopped into. He didn't realize that I think they were going Eastern time. He thought they were on Eastern time, so he thought, 9 o'clock meant, 10 o'clock meant, 10 o'clock Central, but no, he's locked in on that. So he had to make sure that he got there safe and sound and get ready to win some Mahjong. Or at least that's what I thought. They hadn't really disclosed anything. I'm just playing, y'all. They got an ESPN seminar. They got to get their minds right, get ready for a college football season. And you also can get locked in for a college football season with us at the kickoff party. Come celebrate the kickoff to college football with us at the Bill Smith Buick GMC Jox kickoff party at Regents Field on Thursday, August 21st. And the only way to go is by winning tickets. To win a pair of tickets for you and a guest, text the keyword Blazers and your full name to 205-834-9450. The keyword is Blazers along with your full name to 205-834-9450. Winners are drawn and notified daily. For more information, visit joxfm.com. Kind of recapping what we've talked about so far here on Mac and Cube. We got a chance to hear from Paul Finebaum breaking down the coaches poll as we have SEC representation at the number 1 spot with the Texas Longhorns. Also got a chance to hear from SMU head coach Rhett Lashlee as he kind of details what his Mustangs probably are expecting to look like in 2025. They ain't sneaking up on anybody, but a potential run for another college football playoff berth there in the ACC. Also, Gerrod Hamilton hopped on in the second hour to discuss the Missouri football team in 2025 and the expectations for them, kind of detailing some stuff during fall camp. And when we discuss, just looking around the SEC in fall camp, and I was interested in hearing what Gerrod was saying about Missouri because they are the team I can't really figure out because, going back to the coaches poll, Missouri isn't there. The team won 10 games last season. And we kind of look at, a Texas A&M who, failed towards the end of the season, but they get the benefit of the doubt being the 21st ranked team. You look at, Ole Miss and it's kind of the big loss that they had at Kentucky, and then to follow that up with LSU and Florida still sitting around at 15. South Carolina getting some juice, of course, with everything that they have returning. Tennessee being at 18. When I kind of look at how the SEC, I don't necessarily think they got the teams wrong per se, but I do think that it's interesting where these teams are. Oklahoma technically was the first team out because they were 26, and then you see Auburn there at 32. And when I look at, even Vanderbilt is in the top 50. Let me repeat. The Vanderbilt Commodores, no, they're not in the top 25, but they are a top 50 team.
Not in GPA. Or APR or whatever that is. No.
We got to check their PFF rankings and see exactly where this Vanderbilt team is. But kind of looking at the SEC as a whole, with Florida being looked at as one of the better teams, the better units, I think last year caught a lot of people by surprise because, again, going into the season, everybody was thinking if Billy Napier can survive a 5 or 6 win season, they actually did a pretty good job. But then they followed that up with the 8-game, 9-game win, 8-game winning season last year. The expectations now with DJ Lagway, again, having that injury bug, but still looking at being one of the better players in the conference. The expectation levels about a lot of these teams is kind of changed a little bit. I think that, one, having Texas at number 1, I understand it. But I think for me personally, I know on the defensive side of the ball, I don't have as many question marks. But I think a lot of people are looking at the upside of, they have Steve Sarkisian. You look at the success they've had the past two seasons as far as making to the college football playoff. You kind of have to understand that, if there's going to be a team that's going to get the benefit of the doubt, it's them. And I think what Steve Sarkisian has really built, and I go to the conversation we had with Barry Trammell yesterday, who covers Oklahoma, and he kind of brought up the whole question mark of Oklahoma coming into the SEC. Are they ready? Were they built for it? Have they been recruiting towards it? I think Texas kind of was a little bit ahead of the curve when they first got into the SEC because you saw a couple of years ago with Travondre Sweat being on that defensive line. They got bigger in a lot of areas that you need, especially in the trenches when making that transition to the SEC. And now when you look at what they've been able to do in recruiting-wise and what the players that they have coming back, I can understand why they are the number one team. I think Ohio State being at number 2, again, when you're the defending national champions, it's kind of hard not to, unless you just have a complete fall off the map, kind of, when Auburn won the national championship in that following year. I think they were ranked like 21, 22 going into the season. But I think Ohio State has kind of reached that pedestal of, it doesn't really matter what name is on the back of the jersey. We still the Buckeyes. And until proven otherwise, they're always going to be looked at as one of those top teams in college football.
When we had Paul on, I thought he said something very interesting about Texas. And, well, actually, this is what he had to say.
I think the fact that they have been so good for a couple of years, they've recruited well, they've done well in almost every area. And I think Sarkisian brought some of this on by talking about his roster. So the one thing we all react to it. Everybody gets a little more interested when we see that first poll, and I think we'll be more interested a couple of weeks from now whenever the AP poll comes out because it has more credibility. But I think in Texas's case, they just have gotten there by virtue of being the team that's been to the playoffs the last 2 years.
That is something that honestly should be kind of lauded a good bit more. There's only been one team that made the playoffs in back-to-back years. And granted, yes, okay, there were 12 teams last year, but the year before, there were only 4. And only one team has been able to do that. And part of me wants to say maybe that they're a bit overhyped because we don't truly know what we're getting in Arch Manning. We think we kind of do, but also we've seen him play okay. Not necessarily, he's played very good at times.
Right.
But he's also just played okay. But that said, I don't know if anyone else really warranted being ahead of them because I do think Clemson's a good team and probably will not only fight for a playoff spot, but fight for a home bye. But I don't think they're better than Ohio. I don't think they're better than Texas. Ohio State, they seemingly have the talent.
Right.
But they have someone we don't know at quarterback. So it's like, okay, and yes, they are the defending champs, and they do have quite possibly the best receiver, if not the best football player in all of the game. But you still have not only a question mark at quarterback in terms of how he is as a starter, you also have at least a whole new offensive staff. If not that, I think the DC left as well. So Ryan Day's looking around like Will Smith in the finale of Fresh Prince, just like, dang, everything's gone. Just waiting for Carlton to come running down the stair. Goes, hey, and realize, okay, well, there is someone here. I guess that was Jeremiah Smith, the one person that stuck around. And as Greg has said repeatedly, do you want to trust Penn State and James Franklin?
Right.
Like, they may be overall more talented, but I'll believe it when I see it kind of a thing. So as every team near the top does have questions, it feels like Texas most likely has the fewest amount of questions. So I'm okay with them being at number 1. It does feel a little bit off, but I don't think there's a team right now you can put ahead of them.
Right, and that's what me and Conrad talked about earlier on Morning Jox, because I said the only team that could really have an argument is Clemson. I think because of what Cade Klubnik showed you last year when pretty much, I will say that I kind of wrote him off. I was just like, man, he's not that guy. He's been there too long for them not to have had the success that they've had in years past. But he went out there. You get absolutely boat raced by Georgia week 1. Understandable. You follow that up at the end of the season, losing to South Carolina in a rivalry game, but you still end up winning the ACC. You handled your business as far as the conference goes. But I do think that with the pieces that they have, especially on the defensive side too, you kind of look at this Clemson team of, okay, is it going to be kind of how it used to be where it's Clemson and then everybody else? But then you have SMU who entered the chat last year of, yeah, we got a lot of money. We also got a lot of talent. And going into the season, Preston Stone, he ends up getting hurt, and Kevin Jennings, a guy that's, he wasn't necessarily in the quarterback battle, but ends up being the starting quarterback and putting them in a position where they end up making it to the college football playoff. And hearing Coach Lashlee of like, hey, last season, nobody expected us. They were picked 7th in the ACC, and then this year they're picked 3rd. So it's still kind of that underdog mentality, even though you reached probably unprecedented success in year 1 in a new conference. And now you have Miami. Does Miami end up having the same situation where they had last year, where you got the big wins, you win, you're stacking them up, and then you have those questionable losses like to Georgia Tech or to a Syracuse team who you should have beaten, you were better than going into the season. So how much does Carson Beck kind of change that dynamic? And can Mario Cristobal starting to get into that conversation of like Lane Kiffin and James Franklin of, all right, coach, we see what you're doing, but it still hasn't equated to the ultimate success. Still haven't seen you play an ACC championship game. Still haven't had you consistently in the college football playoff discussion. So it kind of, when these polls come out, and again, this is early on, this is preseason projections, which is, I mean, it's something to talk about. And I think that when we look at, just the top 10, you have Texas at number 1, Ohio State at 2, Penn State at 3, Georgia at 4, Notre Dame at 5, Clemson 6, Oregon 7, Alabama at 8, LSU 9, and Miami rounds out the top 10. I do believe that these 10 teams have a conversation. Like, they're at least in the conversation of, all right, if somebody told me that Oregon messed around and wins the national championship at the end of the season, I could believe it. But also, there's no more Bo Nix back there. Now you got Dante Moore. Is it just step in? Hey, the system is going to work. No Tez Johnson out there at receiver. Evan Stewart's hurt. Don't expect him to get back until probably midway to late in the season. Can they survive another Big Ten schedule? I mean, Dylan Gabriel's gone. And, he played a ton of football they had them winning the Big Ten. So I look at a lot of these teams in the top 10, and nobody is kind of just, oh, no, I cannot believe that. Again, Notre Dame, I genuinely just don't know what to expect. I assume that Marcus Freeman is one of the better coaches in college football. Well, now you're replacing a lot from what you had last season in Riley Leonard. You do get Jeremiah Love back, but who are some of those weapons that you're going to be dependent on now? Are they going to be going to a heavy run game and try to, beat people up? I think defensively they're going to be just fine. But I do think that when I look at this top 10, you can have a conversation of what order it is, but I do think that if I had to take the top 10 or the rest of the field of winning the national championship, I would more likely lean one of those teams in the top 10.
Yeah, 1 through 10, we can quibble about the order, but I do think that they got the right teams correct. The only one maybe I might want to is a Florida, but because I think they have a lot of the talent there, but with DJ Lagway's health, although it seems to be improving, and just the schedule that they're going to have to face, they could be substantially improved from last year and still miss a bowl game.
Yep.
So I just ultimately, even though team-wise they might be warranted the discussion, at least being in the top 15 because they were sitting at 17, I'm not going to find anyone that didn't have them in there. 17 does feel a little bit low, but even your teams 6 through 10, Clemson, Oregon, Alabama, LSU, and Miami, I can't put Arizona State above any of them. I definitely can't put Illinois above any of them. South Carolina, maybe,
right,
but
we're going to see them against those teams in the top 10.
Michigan, just doesn't feel right. And Ole Miss, not right. Ole Miss, no, I'd put South Carolina in there sooner than I would Ole Miss.
Yeah,
but I do think ultimately that they got the teams right. I don't know about the order, but at least those are definitely the top 10 teams, and most likely your national champ is coming from one of those 10 teams.
Yeah, and this is rounding out the rest of the top 25. Gave you the top 10 at 11, Arizona State, 12, Illinois, South Carolina at 13, Michigan at 14, Ole Miss at 15, SMU at 16, Florida 17, Tennessee at 18, Indiana 19, 20 is Kansas State, 21 Texas A&M, 22 Iowa State, 23 BYU, 24 is Texas Tech, and 25 are the Boise State Broncos. So we'll continue the conversation on the other side. Would you take the top 10 teams, one of those teams in the top 10, or would you take the field? Do you feel like there's a team that should have been in this top 25? We want to hear from you. 205-834-9450. You can text in, you can call in. We'll keep the conversation about the coaches poll to preseason top 25 on the other side. Keep it locked right here on Jox. $9:18 here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell, John Saber tagging in for the guys as they do their ESPN seminars. They got to lock in, make sure they give you the best broadcast across college football there. ESPN, SEC Network, and a host of others. Should be a lot of fun. But we appreciate those guys letting us hop on in, having some fun. We want to hear from you, 205-834-9450, and kind of just discussing the top 25 preseason coaches poll that was released yesterday. Gotten some reaction here on the Jox text line. Wesley from Jemison, he texts in, I do find it interesting that most experts believe Auburn to be a top 25 team, but they are nowhere to be found in the coaches or previously released preseason AP poll. What's going on there? I think it's a more of a wait and see approach. And again, it's hard because last season, again, your record is what it is. I think we all can sit here and say that, yes, the record was 5-7. It was. But how many of those games could have, and I know Cole's probably going to, beat me up for saying there's no could haves or should haves in football, but how many of those games could have gone either way? But that's the thing. You've got to find a way to win those games. And it's kind of it's a different approach now. Like, you have Jackson Arnold coming in from Oklahoma. I don't think anybody's denying the talent, but we all saw what happened in Oklahoma. And again, and I had this thought yesterday when dealing with Jackson Arnold, and you kind of heard some rumblings. You know, he had a little bit of a rough day over the weekend, kind of throwing the ball. And think of all the things that Hugh Freeze has said is, you know, want his quarterback to be confident. And think of some of the interactions that we saw with Peyton Thorne and Hugh Freeze last year, when there were moments that Peyton was frustrated. There were moments when Hugh was frustrated. You sit Peyton Thorne down, Hank Brown comes in, Hugh Freeze still looks frustrated. What if that happens again this year? What if Jackson Arnold has a little bit of a mental lapse, you know, and reverts back to some of the things that happened in Oklahoma last year, where his confidence was already shot? He already has been benched at his old school. Well, now he's coming into a situation, and maybe it doesn't light up the world. Is Hugh Freeze is he gonna lay into him like he did Peyton Thorne? Are you gonna see more of a more strategic approach of how to handle that? And I think that, you know, the quarterback's got to be mentally tough. Quarterbacks have to be tough. And I like to, you know, poke fun at Greg, like they're treated like royalty half the time. But it is a difficult position to play, and you are in charge of everything that happens on the football field once that ball is snapped. Every decision that happens on that field resides in what you do with your arm if you hand that thing off.
Maybe I've been out a couple of days. Who's out here saying Auburn's the top 25 team?
I think a lot of people.
I know he said experts, and I'm like, maybe I missed it because I've been out a few days. But obviously the coaches don't think that way. I'm not saying they're going to be a bad team, but
right.
Top 25 team. I mean, these were top 25 teams last year. Syracuse, Missouri, UNLV, Colorado. Auburn's 5-7. There was no team worse than 9-3 in at least at the bottom of the top 25. Memphis was 10-2. Army was 11-1.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Auburn's going to repeat last year, but they got a long way to go.
Right.
To be that. I think they're like Vanderbilt. I think they're a top 50 team.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're a top 25 team. Like again, maybe I'm missing. I just didn't know who was out here, who Wesley was out here saying, "Oh yeah, I hear the experts saying it." Really, like, because maybe you just want to think you hear that to take it personally, because
you gotta look for that motivation.
Maybe the person you have to debate in like a couple hours.
No, I think because of the coaches poll, like, you see they're receiving votes, and if it was continuing past 25, I think Auburn's like at 32. For a 5-7 team to even be in that conversation, it's kind of okay. Well, if it all goes right, and I think that Auburn has reached that point of you can't continue to keep getting the benefit of the doubt if you're going to underperform. Like, think about this: Auburn hasn't won more than 8 games since 2019. That's not top 25 worthy. Like, it's not worth having the conversation. So I get it. Like, I can understand it, but I do think that with the pieces that you have around you, it has to be proven. And I think that's where a lot of these coaches, and even I think the AP poll, when it releases in a couple of weeks, will kind of reflect that of it's hard to put all your chips behind them because you haven't shown us in a 5-year span. And again, 5 years is a wide margin. It's enough data to kind of look at and say, well, why would we put them in the top 25? Now, they've had big wins, but also they haven't lined them up consistently. And again, with all the change from Harsin to Hugh Freeze, and then with Hugh Freeze being there for as long as he has, I think, you know, it's almost in the Billy Napier situation of, can you give us some time? Like, can we get some time to kind of build this thing right? Because I've kind of gone back and looked, and, you know, they say, well, the cupboard was bare when Harsin left it. Okay, but think of the nature of the business we are in college football. You can flip a roster quick, like absolutely quickly, because nobody's making any excuses for Deion Sanders at Colorado. He had them at least competing. Like, he had them at one point contending for a Big 12 championship last year. And again, you can't tell me you can't flip it around quickly. You can say, oh, he's doing it in the Big 12 and he's doing it in the SEC. Well, I think it'd be a little bit easier to get the better talent in the SEC than it is to Boulder, Colorado.
That ain't his fault.
Right. And
I mean, if Colorado's in the SEC, I'm sure things would be a lot different. But it's like a character said in The Princess Bride. It's not my fault being the biggest and strongest if we're in a fight. Like, what do you want me to do? Want to take it easy? No, like,
right.
I can't help who else is in my conference. All I can do is recruit the players that I can and play the teams that are in front of me. That's all I can do. I think we figured out why Hugh Freeze was so low, or Auburn was so low. Hugh Freeze has a vote. But he was probably one of those, you know what, I don't think I can rank myself high. But also on the flip side of that, so does Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah, right.
So you probably have a lot of anti-Auburn because DeBoer has a vote. Clark Lee has a vote too.
Oh, yeah, he's
so
looking
both of them like, nope, we got to make sure they're down.
Yeah, they're looking at it like, nah, we ain't doing that. Like, we appreciate it. Wesley, he takes back and he says Joel Klatt is the biggest name to predict Auburn in their top 25. He has them at 22. And you can take that information how you will. I just kind of tune out what Joel Klatt kind of has to say about a lot of things, especially because it all goes back to the Georgia-Alabama game last year where he was just like, oh, Georgia just ran out of time. No, Georgia found themselves down like by 6 scores in the first half. They didn't handle their business. Like, Georgia's not Vanderbilt. They're not Kentucky. No, they went out there in the first half, laid an absolute egg. And in the second half, it was like you were already too late. You were fighting an uphill battle. And Alabama was like, nah, like we got this. Now, we may have played around with our food a little too much, but Alabama still won that ball game. And Carson Beck in that first half looked like a freshman. He looked like Arch Manning when Arch Manning saw the Georgia team across the other side. But I do think that, the coaches poll, and again, Paul Finebaum kind of hit the nail on the head. He's like, a lot of these coaches probably haven't seen much of these other teams because they're so focused on what they got and some of the common opponents that they're going to see. Like, I think a lot of these SEC coaches kind of look at each other and it's like, okay, well, if my team plays our best, I think that we could, like if you're Shane Beamer, you're probably looking at all the teams on your schedule of, well, we should have got them last year. We should have got them last year. Now we got Lenoris again. Yeah, like try to put Alabama ahead of us if you want to. Yeah, they got us last season, but we're returning Lenoris Sellers, who was just trying to figure it out by that time. Now he has the keys, and let's see where it can go.
He just couldn't see. He was out there like Jameis, kind of squinting. He didn't really have the glasses on and the goggles. He didn't want to fully wear them. Now I realized, how important it is. Also, Joel Klatt put out his preseason top 25 for the Joel Klatt show. I don't see Auburn on there. So they're a top 25 team, but he's not willing to put him in his top 25.
Makes sense.
Okay. And that ain't at you, Wesley. That's just more of a, like, is this your king? Like, this is the guy, he's expert. Like, he said it, but I'm looking at a graphic, and we know that's official.
Right.
And
that's the end all be all. On there. Absolutely. Scotty takes in, Scotty and Alpine, is Damian a Barner? No, don't let the shirt fool you. This is called psychological warfare for the debate I have in a couple hours. When you got to look at your enemy wearing your colors, it's just kind of, ooh, that's a sting. That's a grab.
I like to think you didn't need to stoop to that level, but you're choosing to.
Absolutely.
The pettiness aspect of me, I kind of dig that. But also, I mean, this dude took you to a football game.
Yeah.
And like,
absolutely,
y'all are bros and stuff, and now you about here trying to crush his soul.
Listen,
12:30 today at Soho. You've seen Social Taco.
You've seen The Lion King. Even Scar even did it to Mufasa, dog. Well, technically they weren't blood brothers, but
no. And Mufasa kind of stole his girl, but
before
if you saw Mufasa, right? Yeah.
Before that. Robert texts in, he says, I think Alabama's in a perfect spot at number 8 despite a tough schedule. These rankings need to be based on projecting this year and not last season. Ohio State, South Carolina are too high. Texas A&M and Clemson are ranked too low. Ooh. I'm interested to see what you think about Texas A&M, Robert. Feel free to text back as everybody else can. 205-834-9450. You can call in as well. To continue the conversation of the coaches poll, keep it locked right here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. 9:32 here on Jox. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell, John Saybear hopping in for the guys for the final hour. And we want to hear from you, 205-834-9450. Just taking a look at the coaches poll that was released yesterday. A lot of SEC representation. Of course, Texas comes in as the number 1 team in the nation. Georgia comes in at number 4. Alabama at 8. LSU at 9. South Carolina 13, Ole Miss 15, Florida 17, Tennessee 18, and Texas A&M comes in at 21. So there's ever a question of if it just means more, it's answered. It's answered. It's hard not to deny the SEC is the best conference in college football. Yes, we know Ohio State and Michigan have hoisted the trophy the past 2 seasons. And they have also knocked off some SEC teams along the way. But game in and game out, week in and week out, it is hard to deny that the SEC is the best conference. And kind of looking at the top 25, and as everybody knows, I'm a Josh Heupel fan. I am a huge, huge Josh Heupel supporter. And Tennessee being at 18, I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but you can sway me a lot of different directions as far as should Florida necessarily be ahead of. I can understand it because of everything that Tennessee has lost. But if it does click, I can look at this Tennessee team. And again, I'm not saying Joey Aguilar is going to be the next Hendon Hooker. But there are so many unknowns that you can lean more pessimistic that, hey, man, a lot of these guys haven't played. They haven't proven anything. It is so hard to just truly say that they're one of the top 25 teams in the nation right now. Fair enough. You can also lean the optimistic side of things of Josh Heupel's made Joe Milton look at least comparable. Like he made him look decent. Nico won a few games, but you still had that loss against Arkansas where it's like, why are you playing quarterback in the SEC? Hence why he's at UCLA now. But I do think that Tennessee's kind of one of those teams that you can tell me they're going to mess around here and win 8, 9 games. Could believe it. Not that big of a drop-off. You can also tell me they're going to win 6, and I'll be like, yep, it's kind of expected with everything that they've lost. Also, Dylan Sampson ain't running that ball no more. And I think when we had the practice a couple weeks ago with Greg, when he was, kind of talking about the air attack for Tennessee, they haven't even come close to putting up the same numbers as they did with Hendon Hooker in 2022 at the quarterback position. And a lot of it has been since the quarterback since Hendon Hooker. I think that the system is shown that it works. It's just you got to have consistency. And I think that what they've been able to do as far as, spread everything out and still being able to be one of the best teams running the football, now you're about to have a bunch of running backs that have not really carried the load as a Dylan Sampson last year. So I can understand a lot of question marks. There's no James Pierce on that defensive side. Jamar McCoy is going to be coming back from injury. It's just so many unknowns. And I think that, what Josh Heupel, the things that he spoke about at SEC Media Days, like he seemed really confident, very relaxed. It's kind of like, okay, it is when I say wait and see, we will know everything we need to know at least by week 3 when they match up with Georgia. Now, if it's, can you at least make it a ball game? Because you had the game kind of in control last year, but you let a few possessions slip away. Georgia comes back and beats you. But for the most part, I've seen a Tennessee team at ranked number 1 in the nation go down there and absolutely get beat to sleep by Georgia a couple of years ago. So it's kind of a wait and see approach, but I do understand why they find themselves in that little bit of a unique spot at 18. Texas A&M at 21.
I'd flip those 2 teams.
And the thing is, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Yeah, I think I just don't think Tennessee's a top 20 team, but I think they're probably a top 25 team.
Right.
So putting them at 21, I think would make sense. Whereas Texas A&M, another year under Elko and everything that we saw from them, I think they're a top 20 team. So I would flip them.
And that's the thing, man. Like these, and again, it goes back to Texas A&M. Like, can you get out your own way for 1 year? Can you give me 1 year if you just don't find a way to blow it? Like, I understand that it's so difficult because when you look at their roster, you look at how they lay out, it's like, man, it's hard not to believe that they could potentially be a team that's in the college football playoff conversation. but also they'll find some sort of way to just like, you had it right there, and you still you missed it. You missed out. And again, last season, you had 2 games. You had 2 games left on your schedule. An Auburn team that was just like, hey, we just trying to survive. And you go into 4 overtimes and you end up losing. And it's like, come on now. And then you follow that up with Texas, who literally just
somewhat understandable, but still.
Yeah. Like, you've been here long enough. Like, you've been at the party, you've been having a good time, and then you see like your big brother come in there, and it's like, man, come on, dog. Like, I finally got a chance to breathe a little bit. I didn't get ID'd at the party no more. Like, I'm starting to feel good. And then your big brother come in and is like, nah, let's head on up out of here and see what's going on, man. This is for the real contenders. And it's hard not to. And I do love Mike Elko, and I think that what he's been able to do, because you see how physical of a team they can be. But then there's times where it's like, man, like, why can't this team put it together week to week to week? And it kind of just like a burnout effect. It's like, man, come on now. How do you have all this momentum rolling into your favor? I think South Carolina's kind of punched them in the face a good bit. Then you follow that up, and you beat LSU when LSU was in your position of, man, as long as we went out, we should be okay. And then you beat them, and then you follow that up with Auburn and Texas. And it's like, well, it was fun while it lasted. And then not to mention you lost to USC in the bowl game, and there's only so much you can take away from that.
So we figured both of these teams are around the same spot. They're in different points in different aspects, but overall they're right about the same, around a top 20 team. Who's more likely to make Atlanta, A&M or Tennessee? Because to me, I have to say Tennessee, because while I think A&M's the better team, I think they're a much better team. A&M's got the tougher road to get there, and I don't know if they can navigate that, because I know it doesn't matter, but road game 3rd week out the gate at Notre Dame.
Right.
So granted, I know that doesn't matter at Atlanta, but in your last 5 games at LSU, at Missouri, South Carolina, Stanford, and then at Texas, like that's tough for anyone to do.
What was that team you whispered before Texas?
Stanford. Again, it doesn't count for Atlanta, so I was just not putting the emphasis on it.
Don't sleep on them.
I'm not. I mean, we've seen them kind of give other teams fits, and other power teams give them fits.
True.
But it was being glossed over because it doesn't matter in terms of Atlanta, right? They go 10-2 and they lose to Stanford and Notre Dame. Yeah, they're still going to Atlanta because they're right. Yes, like they can go 8-4. Somehow lose to UTSA and Utah State, but they're 8-0 in conference. All right, yeah, they found a way to make it. Yeah, they're going to Atlanta at that point.
Yeah, but I mean, like it's fun because a lot of these teams, like you said, everybody's kind of lumped in that category. I do think Texas and Georgia have kind of put themselves on another level, and then everybody else is kind of in that mode because LSU, they're going to take on Alabama, they're going to take on South Carolina, they're going to take on Texas A&M, and they're going to take on Florida. So it's kind of, man, there's going to be a lot of punching up and punching down as far as the season goes. 205-834-9450. Let's go to the phone lines. Our buddy Robert in Greensville wants to talk this coach's poll. What's going on this morning, Robert?
Yeah, how y'all doing today?
Man, can't complain about a thing, brother.
Well, listen, I think that Ohio State is ranked too high at number 2. I agree with what Cole and Cubelic, Greg McElroy said earlier today. I think it's all based on what happened last year, and I know they develop well. I know they recruit well, but you just look at their schedule. I mean, their schedule is more challenging than people think. You know, they talk about the Texas game a lot, but they have to go to Washington. Washington is a very tough team in Seattle. I mean, they've beaten Oregon and Michigan the last couple of years, second year under their coach. And then they've got Illinois on the road. I know people around here are down about Illinois. They lost 2 receivers, but they got everybody coming back. They got to go to Wisconsin. Alabama will see Wisconsin week 3. Penn State is a huge game. And then they've got Michigan, who I think they're going to lose to again. I think too many people are giving Ohio State the benefit of a doubt. I also think South Carolina is ranked too high. Look, I know they got Lenore Sellers, and I know they got Dylan Stewart, and they're superb players. But you got to look at who they've lost around them, okay? I know they got the Utah State running back eligible, but I just don't. And I know they got some talent wide receiver, and they're very young. And look, whether people want to hear this or not, there's a question mark about Mike Shula being the offensive coordinator there. And we all know Shane Beamer has never been about opening up the offense. And look, I think Alabama's going to take care of South Carolina. I know it's a 5-game stretch, but I'm more concerned about the Oklahoma game. And by the way, I think Oklahoma, be it not ranked, is not smart. I think Oklahoma's got a lot of transfers. Brent Venables is now in charge of that defense. I think you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I think Texas A&M to me is too low. Look, you got to remember they had a chance to win the SEC championship or get the SEC title game in Atlanta and Elko's first year there, and they had a lot of injuries, a lot of bad luck happen down the stretch. And I know they finished 8-5. Look, they got a lot of starters back. I like A&M. I don't like them to win the league, but I think they're going to be better than people think they are. They need to prove it, though, against Notre Dame. That's their proving ground game on September 13th. And at least Tennessee's about right. I think Ole Miss is in because of what they've done in the transfer portal. Also, they got a very favorable schedule. And I think Clemson, to me, that is the team I think to keep an eye on as far as winning the national championship is concerned. I'm thinking about picking them because of all the starters they have returning. They have a fairly tough schedule, but it's not as difficult as the SEC teams have. But we got to play SMU. They barely beat the ACC title game. You got to go to Louisville on a short week. You got South Carolina. You got LSU. You know and you got Syracuse, who won 10 games last year on there. That's some pretty good schedule they have, and I think it's crucial for the ACC to get off to a fast start.
No, you're right, and thanks for that call, Robert. I do think, it's interesting that Robert says that he thinks Ohio State's too high, yet he wants to give Texas A&M the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
Like, Ryan Day just won the championship. Like, if anyone deserved the benefit of the doubt, it's that team. Texas A&M, they've faced some unfortunate luck near the end of last year, but they still were in a position to win it, and they didn't.
Yeah.
And so I'm perfectly fine with Ohio State. I'm kind of there with you. I don't know if they're number 2, but they're a top 5 team. I don't know if they're number 2 because they do have a lot of questions. There are a lot of things that they lost, but Ryan Day, I don't think he has 10 losses since he's been there.
Right.
I think the only, like, quote-unquote bad loss really was he's lost to Michigan, obviously all those times, but every other loss he had was in some kind of postseason, something like he lost in a semifinal matchup or a quarterfinal matchup or the national championship game or whatever. Like, he only has a minute number of losses. So he's earned that kind of benefit of the doubt. But I do think you're right in a lot of aspects, Robert, in that there are some teams that you do need to watch out for. Clemson is one of them. I see where you're coming from in South Carolina, but Shane Beamer, whether or not he opens up the offense, he's shown that he is capable of getting it done.
Yep.
And this will be a very, very proven year. And even though, yes, bringing in Mike Shula, we heard from Shane Beamer earlier when he said how, Mike Shula's worked with a lot of great QBs. He's worked with a big quarterback like Cam, a big athletic quarterback like Daniel Jones. Like, may not be the best example, but you still saw what Daniel Jones was capable of.
Mm-hmm.
He just, didn't have a team around him, whatever, to do that. And bringing that to Lenore Sellers,
right?
Yeah, that can be a massive improvement on a team with a quarterback that's already a top 5 QB in the SEC.
Yeah, and I mean, I get his point with a lot of the pieces that you have, but the names that he said that are returning for South Carolina and Lenore Sellers and Dylan Stewart,
right? Yeah,
they are game changers.
Correct,
like
right.
1,000%.
It's just like Ohio State. Okay, yeah, they lost a good bit, but they got Ryan Day and they got Stewart. Yeah, they're probably going to be fine.
Yeah. So it's kind of, and that's the thing about these polls. A lot of it's just projecting, and a lot of it kind of plays off of what happened last season. I do think there's another team that we haven't really discussed that if it all goes right, and I mean it has to go right, I would not be surprised if they're hoisting the trophy at the end. I'll tell you who that is on the other side. Keep it locked right here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. 9:51 here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell, John Saber with you for a few more moments as we get you set for the 10 o'clock hour as three-man front live from Social Taco. It's a big day, pretty big day. You get the debate with the undercard, me, Damian Mitchell, versus one of our wonderful listeners, Don, and then Conrad follows that up at 1 o'clock with a matchup with Bama Hater. So it should be a jam-packed show. It should be a fun show live from Social Taco. And it should be a great time. You can also party with us on August 21st. Celebrate the kickoff to college football with us at the Bill Smith Buick GMC Jox Kickoff Party at Regents Field on Thursday, August 21st. And the only way to go is by winning tickets. To win a pair of tickets for you and a guest, text the keyword Blazers and your full name to 205-834-9450. Again, the keyword is Blazers and your full name to 205-834-9450. Winners are drawn and notified daily. For more information, visit joxfm.com. Can't wait to see y'all there. So a team that haven't really discussed, and it might come with a little bit of controversy, but again, it's early on. But if it all goes right, you shouldn't be surprised that they could be finding themselves holding a national championship at the end of the season here in the SEC. Amongst everything, all the criticism, all the hate that he receives. But if it all goes right, Brian Kelly and the LSU Tigers, it would not be a surprise if we look at Gerrod Nussmeier throwing for 6,000 yards. Not to say they're going to put up Joe Burrow type numbers, but when you look at the pieces that they have around there, there's a lot of speed at that receiver room. If they actually commit to running the football, like actually saying we are going to run the ball, and they have some success, and if their defense if they just get half a percentage better, LSU is going to be a tough team. Now they gotta find a way to not blow it. Now again, they can go out there and lose week 1, and you can go ahead and just start the party because everybody's going to get Brian Kelly out the door. But if they win all those games after that, there are some teams on their schedule that they're going to have to. They can go toe for toe with, but they got to come out on the winning side of. You get the return with Florida. You get them at home this time. Not to say that it makes much of a difference because they tell us how crazy it is night game in Death Valley. And I saw Alabama pull their coaches in the fourth quarter to come join them on the sideline, and we saw how that went. But Brian Kelly has shown that he can win. He can win at a high level. But also Gerrod Nussmeier, it's a lot on his shoulders. If he can stop, can he slow down the pace in which he would serve the football to the other team? I'm not picking LSU to win it all, but they are definitely in the conversation. I mean, they were in the conversation last year, and then, stuff happens. But it's not out of the realm of possibility that we could be looking at Brian Kelly finally getting over that hump and finding LSU in the college football playoff. Am I crazy for thinking it?
I counted 7 ifs in that. That's a lot of ifs to just find them maybe in the playoff.
But when you look at them on paper, it is hard. It is hard for me to look at this LSU team and say, man, they're talented enough to go toe for toe with anybody else. But a lot of it's just their own misstep. It's their own doing. And think about, and again, that Alabama game, it just deflated them. It's just kind of, man, I thought we were here. We're not there yet. You go on the road to Texas A&M. They beat up on you. You escape early on in the season with South Carolina. And that's when everybody started having conversations of, okay, now is the SEC just really starting to find that parity, or is LSU just inconsistent as all get out? And both things could have been true.
So with their August and September slate of removing the unimportant non-conference games of at Clemson, Florida, and at Ole Miss, do they need to be 2-1 at least, or do they need to be 3-0 to be at least looking at that playoff spot? Because
I think 3-0 to be 3-0 to be serious, 2-1 to have the conversation, to at least sprinkle them in there. Okay. But again, you got Ole Miss last year on literally the last play of the football game. But when you look at just what Aaron Anderson, Barry Brown coming in from the transfer portal, Hinton Jr.'s coming back, they just, to me, I look at them offensively of, if they got to go out there and score 60, they're equipped to it. Now, defensively, can you stop them from scoring 59? Like, can you hold them to 59? That's the question.
That seems like what LSU has been over the last little bit of, yeah, you got the offense, but, I mean, you had your last Heisman Trophy winner, in essence, was wasted.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you scored 50, but allowed 61.
Right. It's hard, man. But I think that's what makes the SEC so much fun. Appreciate Paul Finebaum hopping on with us. Of course, SMU head coach Rhett Lashlee, and also Gerrod Hamilton from Missouri. All those podcasts are there at joxfm.com, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. A lot of fun. We'll continue some great conversation. Take a look at fall camp tomorrow. But coming up at the top of the hour, live from Social Taco, it's 3-Man Front. Keep it locked right here on